Hello and welcome to another video. This is the 7th episode of the story in which Naruto fails an exam for the second time, is duped by and then defeated Mizuki, and is given the opportunity to graduate early but does not take it. Now, with the determination to become strong enough to protect those he cares about, he will reach new heights. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. The tension in the arena was palpable, as the excitement for the final rounds of the Chunin exams grew. The chatter among the contestants waiting in the booth was as electric as the atmosphere surrounding them. Shikamaru leaned lazily against the railing, his eyes half-lidded, his usual bored expression etched across his face. "Man, this is going to be really troublesome," he sighed, clearly unenthusiastic about the upcoming match. Sakura, standing beside him, crossed her arms and gave him an exasperated look. "Everything is troublesome for you," she said, shaking her head. Shikamaru only sighed deeper, his slouch becoming even more pronounced. "It's not my fault it is, especially since I'll have to fight you eventually, so troublesome," he muttered. Before Sakura could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Would you just shut up?" Ayano Kanagi snapped, her frustration rising as she stood nearby, clearly keyed up about her match against Naruto. Naruto, with his usual infectious energy, approached the group with a wide grin. "Ah, someone's nervous," he teased, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Ayano straightened, her competitive spirit flaring up. "Just excited." "Don't get cocky," she shot back with a confident smirk, but there was a flicker of tension in her eyes. Naruto's grin widened, a foxy glint in his gaze. "You should listen to your own advice, or I'll slap your ass all over the arena." His words were playful, but the underlying challenge in his tone sent a wave of heat rushing to Ayano's face. She blushed furiously, unable to hide her reaction, which only made Naruto's grin grow wider. Sasuke, standing off to the side, watched the exchange with a dry smile. "And here I thought you were going to be late," he remarked, his tone teasing but calm. Naruto shot him a sideways glance, smirking. "Says the guy who trained under Kakashi-sensei for a whole month. Pretty sure you've had more lessons in being late than anyone." Sasuke chuckled, giving a slight nod. "Touché. Though I expected you to still be riding the wave of praise from saving that half-dead guy's life. Healing his lungs, something even the medical nin couldn't do, that's impressive." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, his usual bravado faltering slightly. "I've told you 100 times, it was a fluke. I don't even remember what I did exactly." Before the banter could go any further, the sharp voice of Genma Shiranui, the new proctor, sliced through the noise. "Shut up and listen," he barked, the crowd immediately falling into a hush. Genma's trademark senbon dangled from his lips as he continued, his gaze scanning the competitors. "I'm Genma Shiranui, and I'll be the proctor from here on out. The rules are the same as in the preliminaries. I'll interfere if necessary. You'll also get 5 minutes to rest between matches, and for the audience to place their bets. Got it? Good. Now, everyone except Ayano Kanagi and Naruto Uzumaki, head to the competitor's booth." Naruto and Ayano locked eyes for a brief moment, the playful banter between them now replaced with a sharper edge, each one fully aware of the impending fight. The crowd buzzed with anticipation as they cleared the arena for the first match. In the audience high up in the stands, Karui leaned forward eagerly, her excitement impossible to contain. "Kick his ass, Ayano," she yelled at the top of her lungs, her voice carrying over the noise. Sitting beside her, Choji munched on a bag of chips, the two of them part of the group of genins who had lost in the preliminaries, now watching from the stands. Akane, Ayano's mother, sat calmly above them, her red hair catching the light as she observed the scene with a knowing smile. Omoi, who had been sitting nearby, nearly jumped out of his seat when he noticed her. "Kanagi-sama." Omoi stuttered, his face turning pale. "What are you doing here?" Akane gave him a gentle, almost innocent smile. Oh. Am I not allowed to watch my Musum-chan's performance? She asked sweetly, though her tone hinted at a playfulness beneath her words. Oh, of course you are. I just, Omoi fumbled for words, his usual calm thrown off by her unexpected presence. Karui rolled her eyes at her teammate's awkwardness. Before Omoi could dig himself any deeper, Karui piped up, still flushed from her earlier excitement. What do you mean by, it's not possible for Ayano to win, Oba-chan? Akane's eyes twinkled as she teasingly glanced at Karui and Choji, a mischievous smile on her lips. Ah, I'm sorry, Karui-chan. I didn't mean to disturb you and your boyfriend. The word landed like a kunai, and both Karui and Choji immediately turned a bright shade of red. BB boyfriend? Karui sputtered, jumping to her feet in shock, while Choji froze, his face matching her blush as he awkwardly tried to continue eating his chips. Well, that boy next to you, of course, Akane continued, her tone playfully light. Ayano-chan told me you two spent a lot of time together in the hospital, that's because we shared a room. Karui protested, her voice cracking in embarrassment. And that you went on several dates, Akane added, clearly enjoying herself. We were just hungry and went to grab something to eat. Karui's face was practically glowing now. Akane's eyes shifted to the blonde in the crowd, Ino, who was glaring in their direction. And from the look on that blonde girl's face, it's clear that boy doesn't share his food with anyone. Not like how he's sharing his chips with you right now. Choji, who had been quietly eating beside her, looked over at Ino, who crossed her arms and huffed. You're damn right he doesn't, she exclaimed, only making Karui and Choji blush harder. Ah, young love, Akane sighed dramatically, her playful tone making several senseis chuckle. Karui, thoroughly embarrassed, turned back to the original topic, her cheeks still burning. Shut up and answer my question, Oba-chan, she demanded. Akane's smile softened as she looked out at the arena where Naruto and Ayano stood, readying themselves for the match. Ayano-chan is strong, no doubt, she began, her voice more serious now. But Naruto-kun has grown far stronger since their first fight. The mention of their previous encounter piqued Karui's curiosity. Wait. When did they fight before? Akane's eyes grew distant as she recalled the memory. It was some time ago. Back then, Ayano was an arrogant genin who had just defeated Kaiza and earned the right to wield in Raiha. She was proud, and Naruto, he was just an academy student who hadn't even graduated yet. But even then, he beat the arrogance right out of her. Humiliated her, really. The revelation stunned everyone who heard it. But now she has Rekka, Karui started, trying to wrap her mind around the idea of Ayano losing to a younger Naruto. Akane smiled slyly. And who do you think gave her that weapon? She asked, watching the shock spread through the group. This match isn't about her winning. It's about showing how much she's grown. And maybe, impressing the boy she fancies. Out of the corner of her eye, Akane noticed Ino's expression harden ever so slightly, and she couldn't help but smirk. The competitor's booth meanwhile, back in the competitor's booth, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Sakura leaned on the railing beside Hinata, her eyes flicking between Naruto in the arena and the girl beside her. I heard you confessed, Sakura said softly, trying to sound casual despite the weight of the words. Hinata nodded, her usual shyness creeping into her posture. Yes, she answered curtly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sakura hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her. What was his answer? Hinata glanced sideways at her, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. Why do you care? You like Sasuke-san, she murmured, but when she saw Sakura's expression falter, her own eyes widened in surprise. Don't tell me, you, Sakura quickly covered her mouth, her cheeks flushing. I might, why you know, so, she stammered, struggling to get the words out. Hinata blushed too, but after a long pause, she gathered her courage. He said he can't answer my confession right now, but he didn't say no. A heavy silence hung between them as Hinata turned, her pale eyes filling with a quiet but determined resolve. No matter what. I won't lose to you, Sakura, she said, her voice trembling but strong, her words a challenge. Sakura, feeling the same determination rise within herself, nodded. Neither will I. The tension on the arena floor was palpable as Genma Shiranui's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Are you both ready? Ayano and Naruto gave firm nods, their eyes locked on each other. Hajime. Ayano wasted no time, immediately rushing at Naruto, who stood calmly, adopting a defensive stance. His posture was relaxed, yet calculated. Ayano's taijutsu skills were impressive, surprising even those in the crowd who knew her. But Naruto, with fluid ease, avoided or blocked each strike, his movements effortless. Every punch, every kick was either swatted away or dodged entirely. The frustration on Ayano's face became evident, her brow furrowing as she tried harder, only for Naruto to continue evading her attacks. She overextended in one strike, and Naruto seized the opportunity. With a swift palm strike, he hit her squarely in the chest, sending her flying several meters back before she managed to land in a crouched position. Naruto smirked. You're not half bad, but you're no match for Lee either. Ayano's cheeks flushed, not just from exertion, but from the sudden realization of where he had struck her. He touched them, she thought, flustered, as she held a hand to her chest. Calm down, Ayano. Focus. Shaking off her embarrassment, Ayano quickly shifted tactics, running through hand seals. Raiton, Jibashi, she shouted, sending a wave of crackling electricity surging toward Naruto. Naruto responded instantly, forming his own seals. Futon, Detapa, he yelled, unleashing a powerful gust of wind. The wind dispelled the lightning in a burst of sparks, but Ayano had anticipated this. As Naruto's wind technique dissipated, Ayano smirked. Got you. Enten, Kane Ho Sha. Blaze release, flamethrower technique, she screamed, and a torrent of scorching red flames erupted from her mouth, feeding off the wind Naruto had just conjured. The combined power of fire and wind roared toward him, forcing Naruto's eyes to widen in shock. But Naruto wasn't the type to freeze in panic. Acting quickly, he slammed his hands to the ground. Doton, Dorihiki, he called out, summoning an earthen wall between himself and the flames. The fiery attack collided with the wall, which began to crack under the heat. Naruto's mind raced. The wall won't hold. Thinking on his feet, he pressed his hand against the crumbling earth barrier. In a split second, the wall exploded, sending debris flying and cutting through Ayano's flamethrower, dispersing it and creating a thick cloud of dust between them. The audience, smart, Akane Kannagi, Ayano's mother, observed from the stands, her voice calm but approving. Smart? What do you mean, Oba-chan? Karui asked, her eyes glued to the arena below. Akane smiled. Naruto-kun neutralized Muzum-chan's attack by blowing up his own wall. Ino, sitting a few rows down, frowned. How though? He didn't use any paper bombs. A chuckle came from their sensei, Asuma Sarutobi. Naruto's advanced in Fuinjutsu, didn't you know? He said. He put the seal on the wall just by touching it. What? Ino's voice was a mixture of disbelief and awe. Akane's gaze flicked to the astonished faces of the Konoha genin. He's an Uzumaki, she explained. They were feared across the elemental nations for their mastery of Fuinjutsu. Konoha even honors them with the Uzumaki swirl on your vests, in remembrance of their greatest ally. But the village failed to protect Uzushio in its time of need, and Naruto-kun, well, he's a true Uzumaki. Unpredictable. Dangerous. Kind-hearted to friends, but terrifying to enemies. And most importantly, powerful. Omoy, still stunned by the conversation, tilted his head in confusion. If he can place those seals with a touch, why didn't he use one when he hit Ayano with that palm strike earlier? A new voice joined the conversation, as Karen descended from the competitor's booth. Because he wants her to advance. Karui turned to her with a questioning look. Why would Naruto want a Kyumo kunoichi to advance? To Nisama, Ayano isn't just a kunoichi from Kyumo, Karen explained. She's a friend. And as a friend, he wants her to grow stronger. What better way to help her than by pushing her to improve and advance in rank? The arena floor. Ayano stood poised, her senses heightened as she waited for the dust to clear. Her grip tightened around the hilt of Rekka, her mind racing as she tried to pinpoint Naruto's location through the swirling dust. She heard a faint sound, something cutting through the air. Instinctively, she hurled a kunai, only to realize too late that it wasn't Naruto at all, but his hoodie tied to another kunai, flying toward her. Her eyes widened just as the crackling sound of electricity came from behind her. Too late. She swung her katana in a desperate arc, and for a split second, her heart froze. She saw the blade cleanly cut through Naruto's body. I killed him. But the body dissolved into a puff of smoke, just a clone. A split second later, the real Naruto appeared behind her, delivering a swift kick to her side that sent her skidding across the arena floor. The air was knocked from her lungs, pain radiating from her bruised ribs. Gritting her teeth, Ayano stabbed Rekka into the ground, using it to stop her momentum before she crashed into the arena wall. Breathing hard, Ayano glanced up to see Naruto casually zipping up his hoodie, his smirk broadening. You transformed into the kunai, she muttered, glaring at him, her pride stung. Naruto's grin only widened. If that's what you want, then I'll stop holding back. Without further warning, he unsealed Enraiha, the blade gleaming in the light. The audience, what the hell? Karui screamed, her voice echoing in the stands. That's Enraiha. How does Naruto have it? Akane, unfazed by the outburst, simply nodded. Yes. That's Enraiha. Karui pointed accusingly at the blonde in the arena. Then, he's the one who stole it. Akane shook her head, a small smile on her lips. No. He's the one who retrieved it. And before you ask, that sword belongs to Naruto-kun. The surrounding crowd, especially the Konoha genin, were shocked. Enko, sitting nearby with Kurenai and Hana, leaned back with a smirk. Man. I knew the Gaki was special, but taking down an A-rank missing nin for that sword while he was still a genin? Akane's gaze turned serious. He wasn't even a genin at the time, still an academy student. Ayano-chan fought him back then, trying to win the right to wield Enraiha. But Naruto, he defeated her, humbling her, while Yorekage was here paying the bounty for that missing nin. The revelation stunned the Konoha genin even further. Enko whistled low. That kid's got some secrets. He does, Hana agreed. Naruto's outgoing, friendly, but very secretive. Even Enko pestering him for a whole month didn't get much out of him. I wasn't pestering, just showing gratitude, Enko mumbled, pouting slightly. Karen, still standing near the group, chimed in. Even I, living with Nisama for a month, learned more about him through Sasuke-kun than from Nisama himself. It's frustrating, but, from what I hear, if anyone can get him to open up, it's Sakura. The crowd continued to buzz with whispered conversations, but all eyes were glued to the arena as the battle intensified. The arena floor. Ayano's gaze sharpened as Naruto brandished Enraiha, his aura shifting. The playful smirk was still there, but now there was a fierceness behind his eyes. Fine, Ayano thought, steadying herself, her grip tightening around Rekka. If this is how it has to be, I won't back down. The tension on the arena floor reached its peak as Naruto and Ayano faced each other, both their blades ignited in flames. With a synchronized battle cry, both of them yelled, "Mo-ha," and unleashed waves of fire. Ayano's flames were a brilliant red, while Naruto's blazed with an eerie white glow. The waves collided in mid-air, clashing for dominance before erupting in a fiery explosion that sent a searing wave of heat washing over the audience. Ayano skidded back slightly, her expression fierce, but she couldn't hide the flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Heh, you matched me in power." "What kind of flames were those?" she asked, narrowing her gaze at him. Naruto's lips curved into a smirk. "Shikuten," he said simply, watching the shock flood her face as her eyes widened. Using her surprise to his advantage, he dashed forward, engaging her in close combat with his sword, Inraiha. The sword fight that followed was intense, the sharp clashing of blades ringing throughout the arena. Naruto's speed and strength quickly outmatched Ayano, who was struggling to keep up despite her better sword technique. Though Ayano's form was disciplined, her frustration grew as Naruto easily countered her moves, holding his weapon with just one hand while she struggled with both hands on her blade, Rekka. In desperation, Ayano tightened her grip on Rekka, hoping to overpower him by sheer force. But Naruto, maintaining his calm demeanor, shifted his weight and took a small step to the side, allowing her momentum to carry her forward. Ayano stumbled, her balance thrown off, and before she could recover, Naruto took the opportunity to smack her across the backside with the broad side of his sword. The impact sent her tumbling forward. Ayano rolled to regain her footing, heat rising in her cheeks as she glared at Naruto with a mix of frustration and embarrassment. The young Uzumaki stood a few paces away, a teasing smile on his face. "You've matured, that's good," he said with a soft chuckle, as he deftly dodged another wave of fire she hurled his way. "But you're still no match for me." Ayano's temper flared, her eyes blazing as she readied herself for another attack. "Oh yeah?" she yelled, her frustration boiling over. She swung Rekka, its blade engulfed in flames, but before the strike could land, Naruto moved. He appeared in front of her mid-swing, his movements too fast for her to follow. Crouching beneath the fiery blade, he channeled a small burst of lightning chakra into his fingers and struck her elbow. Ayano's entire arm went numb. She nearly dropped Rekka from the sudden paralysis. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself to swing down with her other arm, trying to push Naruto back, but he blocked her attack effortlessly. With a quick, precise movement, he struck her other elbow, making both her arms go limp. Rekka fell from her hands, clattering to the ground. Ayano's eyes widened in horror. She was defenseless now. In desperation, she used the only jutsu she could without needing hand seals. "Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu," she cried, spitting out a large fireball that surged toward Naruto. Naruto, sensing the chakra buildup, leapt backward, but it was too close, there was no time to fully evade. The fireball was upon him, yet just as the flames were about to hit, Naruto grinned. Boom! A sudden explosion shattered the fireball, sending Ayano skidding across the arena floor. Dazed and disoriented, she barely registered the foot that pressed gently against her back, pinning her to the ground. The cold steel of Inraiha was resting against her neck, sending a shock of realization through her. Inraiha. Ayano thought, her mind racing. How? When? Before she could ask, Naruto's voice broke the silence. "You're probably wondering how I did it," he said casually, his tone almost playful. "I left a clone behind when I struck your arms with lightning. I knew you'd try something as a last line of defense, so I switched with the clone. Sealing Inraiha was just a cover for my chakra usage. You panicked a little, and that made it easier." Naruto's clone appeared beside him, holding Rekka in its hands. Ayano's heart sank as she realized she had truly lost. Naruto, standing over her, smiled gently. "You lost, but it was a good fight. Tears welled up in Ayano's eyes, spilling down her cheeks. I lost, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm not worthy of wielding Rekka if I lost it so easily in a fight. I'm sorry, Naruto sighed softly. Girls, they're always crying over nothing. He knelt down beside her, his voice softer now. If I didn't think you were worthy, I wouldn't have given Rekka to you in the first place. His words were calm but reassuring. You've made great progress since the last time we fought. I'm proud of you. Keep working hard, and one day, you'll become a legend. Ayano, through her tears, smiled and blushed, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Genma's voice boomed across the arena. Winner of the first match, Uzumaki Naruto. The audience erupted into applause, cheers filling the arena. Naruto, ever the gentleman, lifted Ayano into his arms, carrying her bridal style. Her face turned neon red from embarrassment, but there was a small, secret thrill in being held by him like this. She smiled, despite herself, resting against his chest. Come on, Naruto said, smiling down at her, let's get you to the medics. The audience, whooo. You did it, Nai-sama, screamed Karen, her voice ringing out above the rest of the cheers. Karui slumped into her seat, still stunned. Ayano, lost, she whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. Akane, sitting nearby, smiled softly. As I said, Muzum-chan simply couldn't win this fight. But she did what she could, and she showed that she's a very talented young lady. I am certainly proud of her. Akane's thoughts wandered as she watched Naruto carry her daughter off the arena floor. Especially now that Ayano can finally put those foolish insecurities behind her. She smiled. I'll have to thank Naruto-kun for that. Asuma, watching from the stands, let out a low whistle. Well, we're definitely going to have a new Chunin, just like Kyumo. Enko, sitting beside him, crossed her arms, her tone blunt as always. I hope those old geezers don't try to hold him back. They won't, Hana said firmly, if they know what's good for them. Kurenai, who had been watching in thoughtful silence, finally spoke up. After watching this match, and hearing about everything he's done in the past month, I don't think making Naruto a Chunin is enough. He's beyond that level, more like Jonin or at least Tokubetsu Jonin. Asuma nodded, his brow furrowed in agreement. I've been thinking the same thing. Chunin feels like a waste of his talents. He's taken down A-rank enemies and has natural leadership skills. Even Shikamaru says he's willing to follow Naruto without hesitation, and for a Nara, that's really saying something. The Kyumo kunoichi, Karui, turned to Choji, her brow furrowed in confusion. Is Shikamaru really that lazy? Choji chuckled, popping a chip into his mouth. His hobbies are cloud-watching and sleeping, and his dream is to live a lazy life with a not-too-troublesome wife and 2 not-too-troublesome kids. Karui blinked in surprise. Are all people from Konoha crazy or something? Karen, still beaming from Naruto's victory, laughed. Only the best ones. At least, that's what Nisama always says. As the conversations in the stands continued, the next match was being prepared, but all eyes were still on Naruto, an unpredictable force, a true Uzumaki, and a shinobi whose future now seemed brighter than ever. In the Kage booth, the atmosphere was tense, yet filled with a certain air of admiration for the young Uzumaki. As the applause for Naruto's victory echoed through the arena, the Mizukage, Mei Terumi, was the first to comment. Well, the Uzumaki boy sure is talented, she said, her tone impressed yet curious. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Hokage, nodded with a smile. Yes, and what's remarkable is that he's mostly self-taught. Naruto-kun truly is one of a kind. The Raikage, folded his arms, a slight scowl on his face. If you ask me, he's still just a brat. The Hokage, Inoki, raised an eyebrow at A's comment. Does that mean you've had the pleasure of meeting him before, Hokage Dano? A grumbled in response, clearly not happy to elaborate. We had a slight disagreement during our last conversation, Hiruzen chimed in diplomatically, hoping to steer the conversation away from whatever past incident had occurred between the Hokage and Naruto. Nevertheless, Hiruzen continued, Ayano-san in my opinion deserves the title of Chunin. Mei nodded in agreement. I concur. You've raised quite the kunoichi, Hokage Dano. The Hokage, however, remained skeptical. And yet she had no chance against that boy, as I mentioned earlier, Hiruzen said, his voice carrying a note of pride, Naruto-kun is a special case. He's probably stronger than most of my Chunin. Inoki's sharp eyes narrowed. Then why is he still taking part in these exams? Why didn't he graduate earlier? Are you using him to attract more clients to Konoha? The Hokage shook his head gently. I gave him the opportunity to graduate earlier. But he refused, saying he didn't feel ready or worthy of becoming a shinobi at the time. Mei Terumi looked thoughtful, her eyes still on the arena floor where Naruto had stood moments before. Even so, I don't think making him a mere Chunin would be fitting. His abilities are far beyond that. Despite his earlier comments, sighed. I might not like that cheeky brat, but I'm not blind. Ayano's as strong as many of my Chunin, and he beat her with ease. He's not someone I'd want my Chunin to face. Inoki's thoughts, however, were more cautious. That boy might become too dangerous in the future. His eyes flicked briefly to Hiruzen, wondering if the Hokage truly grasped the full potential and threat Naruto could represent if he continued to grow unchecked. Contestant booth. 5 minutes later, as Naruto returned to the contestant booth, he was greeted by a mix of reactions. Rock Lee, ever enthusiastic, clapped him on the back. That was a most youthful match, my most youthful rival. Sasuke leaned back against the railing, his expression calm but his words blunt. The girl never stood a chance. You should have ended it sooner, though. Don't use being tired as an excuse when you lose to me. Naruto grinned, undeterred. I didn't know you'd already won your match, team. Hinata, standing a little to the side, smiled softly. That was a good match, Naruto-kun. Yeah, Sakura added, her tone slightly scolding, but you gave us quite a scare a couple of times, you idiot. Naruto scratched the back of his head, laughing sheepishly. Heh, sorry. Didn't mean to worry you guys. His gaze shifted back to Hinata. I'd wish you good luck, Hinata, but after seeing how strong you've gotten, I know you're going to kick that jerk Niiji's ass. Hinata blushed a deep crimson. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Before anything else could be said, Genma's voice cut through the noise. Will Hinata Hyuga and Niiji Hyuga please come down here for the second match? Naruto gave Hinata a firm but encouraging hug. Kick his ass, Hinata, and don't hold back. Hi, she stammered, blushing furiously as she left the booth to head down to the arena floor. As soon as Hinata was out of sight, Sakura's eyebrow twitched in irritation. Did you have to hug her like that? Huh? Naruto blinked, tilting his head in confusion. What do you mean? Before Sakura could explain, Kuratsuchi, the granddaughter of the Hokage, slid up behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her chest into his back. You should stop acting like a jealous girlfriend, Kuratsuchi teased with a smirk, especially since Naruto isn't taken, not yet anyway. She hugged him tighter, her small breasts pressing even more firmly against him. Naruto, ever oblivious, blinked in confusion. I think I'm missing something here. Sakura glared daggers at Kuratsuchi, who smiled sweetly back at her. The tension between the two kunoichi was thick enough to cut, and Naruto, as usual, was blissfully unaware. Arena floor. Hinata and Niiji faced each other on the arena floor, the the proctor standing between them. Genma's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Are you both ready?" They nodded. Then. "Hajime." Niiji wasted no time, his cold arrogance evident in the way he addressed his cousin. "You should give up, Hinata-sama. The only way you could win this match is if you used the seal you yourself have abolished." Hinata's eyes narrowed. Naruto's words echoed in her mind, filling her with renewed strength. "Naruto-kun was right about you, Niiji-ni-san," she began, her voice calm but firm. "You're far too arrogant for your own good. I only hope that when I win today, your pride will allow you to see the flaws in your thinking." Niiji scoffed, his confidence unshaken. "I'm sorry, Hinata-sama, but fate has already declared me the winner of this match." "You cannot change fate." Hinata's eyes burned with determination as she stared him down. "Those are the words of a fool. There might be such a thing as fate, but neither you, nor I, nor anyone in our clan can see it. It's sad that your Byakugan blinds you to that." Niji's arrogant mask slipped for a moment, his gaze turning harsh. As the future head of the Hyuga clan, Hinata continued, "I'll change that thinking. And I'll start today, by beating you." She dropped into her stance, and the change in her posture sent ripples through the audience, especially among the Hyuga clan members watching. Her stance wasn't the traditional Juken form they all knew. Hyuga clan audience section. In the Hyuga clan's reserved section, Elder Hiroshi paled as he saw Hinata's stance. His voice was barely a whisper, but filled with dread. "How in the world? I thought I destroyed that style when I sold the scrolls." Unfortunately for him, his muttering didn't go unnoticed. Hayashi Hyuga's eyes darkened as he turned to the elder. "What do you mean, Hiroshi?" Hiroshi froze, beads of sweat forming on his brow. I can explain." Hoshi, another elder and a staunch protector of the Hyuga traditions, leaned in, his tone dripping with menace. "You better, Hiroshi. If not, you'll pay dearly for your transgression." Hayashi's voice was cold and unforgiving. "And if you've stolen anything that belonged to my daughter, Hiroshi, you'll pay for it in blood." The weight of Hoshi and Hayashi's combined killing intent fell on Hiroshi like a crushing wave. He trembled under their glare, but the consequences of his actions were now set into motion. All he could do was pray that he could find a way to escape their wrath. On the arena floor, Niji's glare intensified as his Byakugan activated, veins bulging around his eyes. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his tone full of contempt. Hinata, unfazed, activated her own Byakugan with fluid ease, not even needing hand seals. This shocked Niiji, but he said nothing. Hinata met his glare with calm composure. "I've taken my stance, Nisan," she said, her voice steady. "This is a Juho stance, a style created by our grandmother for those in our clan with a water affinity instead of earth. Unfortunately, the scroll with the technique was lost," she explained with a slight smile, "but Naruto-kun retrieved it. And gave it to me as a gift." Niiji scoffed, trying to regain his composure and insult her in the process. "So you admit you're too weak to use our clan's taijutsu?" Hinata's smile remained, though there was an edge to her words now. "Were you deaf when I told you our grandmother created this style?" she shot back. "You know what? Don't answer that. I don't want to hear it." She exhaled calmly. "I just hope that when I win today, those in our clan who struggle with the Juken style will have the courage to step out of the shadows and try this style. It was made for more fluid movements." Niji's eyes narrowed in disdain. "You're a fool, Hinata-sama, if you think you'll win today." Without waiting for a response, Niiji lunged at her, intending to end the match quickly. His movements were fast and precise, but Hinata was faster. With a graceful spin, she dodged his palm strike at the last second, pivoting on her heel, and as she spun, she struck him in the side, closing one of his chakra points. The crowd gasped in surprise, and Niiji stumbled, his face tightening in pain and frustration. Quickly regaining his balance, he glared at her, now keeping a wider distance. That was just a lucky shot, Niiji spat, his tone laced with irritation. If you say so, Hinata replied with a serene smile, her confidence only fueling his anger. Niiji, now more focused, charged again, but this time with more caution. He anticipated her fluid movements, dodging and countering with greater precision. However, Hinata danced around him, her strikes flowing like water, avoiding his palms as though it were effortless. To the audience, it looked like a graceful dance, with Hinata always one step ahead of her cousin. After a few minutes, Hinata landed another blow, closing a chakra point in Niji's leg. His balance faltered for a split second, just enough for her to move in and attempt a decisive palm strike to his chest. Seeing no other choice, Niiji resorted to one of his trump cards. Hakusho Kaiten, he shouted, spinning rapidly as chakra poured out of his body, forming a protective dome around him. The force of the chakra sent Hinata flying backward, crashing to the ground. As the spinning stopped, Niiji stood tall, his breath heavy but triumphant. Do you see it now, Hinata-sama? Even if you've gotten a little stronger, you're still a loser. His voice was dripping with superiority. Hinata groaned as she slowly rose to her feet, clearly feeling the impact of the Kaiten. Still, she smiled weakly, her eyes soft but unwavering. Why Ni-san, she began, catching her breath, I expected you to know some of the main branch techniques. But tell me, why are you calling me a loser when it was me who forced you to use that jutsu? Niji's eyes flared with barely contained fury. His attempt to remain composed shattered as her words stoked his rage. He surged forward, channeling chakra into his legs, closing the distance in an instant. Hinata, still recovering from the Kaiten, couldn't react in time. Niiji activated his Byakugan once more and took the familiar stance of the Hyuga clan's main branch. You're in my field of divination. Hakurokuji on show, he shouted, his voice full of venom as he began the attack. Niji's strikes were relentless, his palms moving in rapid succession as he hit Hinata's chakra points with precision. She tried to defend herself, but the attack was too fast, too overwhelming. As he finished the 64th strike, Niiji delivered a final blow to her chest, sending her crashing backward. She lay on the ground, struggling to breathe. Niiji stood over her, deactivating his Byakugan as he glared down at her. Do you see now the difference between us? I was destined to win, just like my father was destined to die in place of yours. And you're destined to always be a loser. You're a fool to think otherwise. Hinata, coughing and clutching her chest, managed a soft laugh, which only deepened Niji's anger. Is that all you think about, Ni-san? The past? She asked, her voice weak but full of resolve. People who live in the past get passed by the present and crushed by the future. Just like you will lose this fight today. She slowly got to her feet, her body trembling from the pain, but her eyes were burning with determination. Because you are in my field of divination. Niji's eyes widened in shock, as Hinata's voice came from behind him. Hakurokuji on show. The second Hinata appeared behind him, delivering the full force of the Hyuga clan's famed technique. Each strike hit its mark, and with each blow, Niiji felt his body weaken, his chakra points closing rapidly. When the assault ended, Niiji collapsed to his knees, unable to stand. He gasped for breath, his pride shattered. Hinata, the real one, walked around him, her expression full of sadness, not triumph. How? Niiji managed to ask, his voice hoarse, as he stared up at her in disbelief. Hinata smiled kindly, though her exhaustion was evident. The Hinata behind you was a Chi Bunshin, a blood clone. It took me 2 weeks to gather enough chakra to create it, and during that time, Naruto-kun helped me master the Kawarimi no Jutsu so I wouldn't need hand seals, or leave any trace of smoke. She knelt down, touching the clone's head, and the clone dissolved into blood that flowed back into her, replenishing a small amount of her chakra. I unsealed the clone from the mark Naruto-kun placed on my palm, and it appeared underground, waiting for the right moment. After you attacked me, I switched places with it. The clone's job was simply to make you lose control of your emotions, she explained, her tone soft but firm. Do you see it now, Ni-san? You no longer need to live in the past. There's no cage holding you back. You are free, just like the rest of our clan. Don't let the loss of your father cloud your judgment. Niiji looked up at her, his breath labored, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Hinata smiled gently, standing tall. Learn from this loss, Niiji. Even the strongest can fall if they underestimate their opponent. But that doesn't make you weak, it means you still have room to grow. Genma's voice echoed through the arena. Winner, Hinata Hyuga. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Niiji remained on his knees, absorbing the lesson he had just been taught. Hinata, bruised but victorious, walked toward the medics with quiet dignity. For the first time, Niiji felt something shift inside him, something that was not anger or resentment, but perhaps, hope. Top of form in the Hyuga section of the audience, the silence hung for a few moments before Hanabi, the youngest of the Hyuga sisters, finally found her voice. Ne-sama really won, she whispered, her eyes wide in disbelief. For so long, she had seen her older sister as the weaker of the two, but now, everything seemed to have shifted. Hayashi, the Hyuga patriarch, nodded, his expression betraying a rare moment of pride. Oh my, so Naruto-kun was right after all. Hanabi turned to her father, curious. What do you mean, Ta-san? Hayashi chuckled lightly. Well, yesterday, I spoke with Naruto. He told me that Niiji didn't stand a chance against Hinata as he is now. He said that Niji's arrogance and unhealthy pride would lead to his downfall. I recall him saying something about the might of Hinata's cuteness conquering all. Hayashi's tone was thoughtful, though he still seemed somewhat baffled by Naruto's confidence in Hinata. At the time, I thought the boy had lost his mind. Hanabi blinked in surprise. So that blonde baka knew Ne-sama would win? Certainly, came a voice from behind them, Hoshi, an elder of the clan and a close confidant to Hayashi. Especially if Naruto-kun knew that Juho was originally created to surpass Juken. Hanabi turned to Hoshi, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean, Hoshi-sama? Hoshi smiled warmly at the young girl. The Juho style was created by your grandmother, Hanabi. She was the strongest Hyuga our clan has produced in a century. It was designed for those with a natural fluidity and water affinity, like Hinata. Your Ne-sama is following in her footsteps. Hanabi's eyes widened in awe as she looked at her sister, now walking proudly out of the arena, victorious and strong in a way she hadn't seen before. In the audience, near the genin and senseis, the shock was just as palpable. Kurenai stared down at the arena, still processing what had just happened. She really won. Karen, leaning casually on the railing, gave a knowing smirk. Why are you so shocked? Ne-sama said there could only be one outcome, Niji's arrogance would be his downfall. Anko, who had been watching with growing interest, raised an eyebrow. The brat said that? Karen nodded. Yep. He even told me to place my bets on Hinata. Speaking of which, she added with a grin, I'm going to collect my winnings now. She turned and began making her way up the stairs, her smile wide. Akane, Naruto's other older sister figure, smirked knowingly. Don't you mean Naruto's winnings? Oh yeah, Karen called back over her shoulder. But I also used my own money to bet on Ne-sama's victory, so I'm cashing that in too. Anko watched Karen disappear into the crowd with a grin of her own. Gambling at such a young age. I'm so proud of him, she said dramatically, wiping an imaginary tear from her eye. Hana, sitting nearby, chuckled. Somehow, that doesn't surprise me. Kurenai, still marveling at how much Hinata had grown, shook her head in disbelief. Those training sessions with Naruto really made a huge difference. Asuma leaned closer to Kurenai, whispering softly enough for only her to hear. Hee, that's the power of love. Kurenai rolled her eyes, swatting him lightly on the arm. That's incredibly cheesy, even for you. In the contestants' booth, the mood was triumphant as Hinata returned. Congratulations, Hinata, that was amazing. Sakura beamed, her eyes bright with admiration. Blushing slightly, Hinata smiled shyly. Thank you, Sakura-chan, but without Naruto-kun's help, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Before she could say anything more, a sharp chop came down on her head. "Tti," she exclaimed, rubbing her head in confusion. Naruto stood beside her, his expression bored but fond. "Take the credit when it's due," he said, looking at her with a mock-serious gaze. "I may have come up with the plan, but you're the one who made it happen." Sakura, crossing her arms with a smirk, added, "Says the guy who's always shocked when someone thanks him for doing something selfless." Kuratsuchi, the Iwa Kunoichi, gave Hinata an approving nod. "All in all, that was a solid fight, Hyuga." Akatsuchi, standing beside Kuratsuchi, nodded in agreement. "Yeah, that was really something." "Thank you," Hinata said softly, bowing slightly to both of them. "But," Kuratsuchi added, her smirk returning, "I'm still going to beat both of you." Before any banter could follow, Genma's voice boomed over the arena. "Will Uzumaki Naruto and Rock Lee come down here for the next match?" Naruto grinned, his excitement barely contained. "Well, it's my turn," he said, flashing a playful smile as he and Lee immediately vaulted over the railing, landing gracefully on the arena floor below. In the audience, near the genin and senseis, the conversation turned to the upcoming fight. "Well," Asuma said, lighting another cigarette, "Naruto sure has an unfair advantage in this one. Lee can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu." Guy, sitting nearby, gave a passionate smile. "Ah, Asuma, my youthful friend, while what you say may be true, Naruto-kun's youthful spirit will not allow him to disrespect Lee. He knows Lee considers him his eternal rival, and Naruto-kun will fight him using the power of his own muscles alone, out of respect for Lee's passion." Anko, who had been lazily following the conversation, snorted. "So you're saying that blonde brat's only going to use taijutsu? That's plain stupid. Why waste all your other resources?" Karen, having just returned from collecting her winnings, smiled confidently. "That may be true in most cases, but Naruto will fight Lee the way he knows is right. It's not about showing off all his skills, but about honoring Lee's spirit. Plus," she added with a mischievous grin, "it'll show everyone that aside from ninjutsu, kenjutsu, and fuinjutsu, Nisama's taijutsu is nothing to sneeze at. It's a win-win." Anko raised an eyebrow. "He's really that good at everything, huh?" Karen nodded confidently. "Just watch." On the arena floor, Naruto and Lee stood opposite one another, the crowd buzzing with excitement. Rock Lee, eyes full of fire, gave Naruto a wide smile. "Naruto-kun. I am overjoyed that we finally have the opportunity to test our youthful strength against one another." Naruto grinned back, cracking his knuckles. "Same here, Lee. I've been looking forward to this." He raised his fists, falling into a stance. "Let's give them a show." Lee's fists clenched, and he took his own stance, radiating excitement. "I promise to fight you with all the strength of my youth." Naruto's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then I'll do the same." The proctor, Genma, raised his hand. "Begin." With that, the two charged at each other, their battle of pure taijutsu about to begin, fists and feet clashing in a test of skill, strength, and the unbreakable bonds of rivalry. The moment Genma's voice rang out, declaring the start of the match, both Naruto and Lee shifted their stances. The energy between them was palpable, their excitement unmistakable. But before either of them could make a move, Naruto spoke up, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. "You know," Naruto began as he slowly unzipped his orange hoodie, "I think we should stop fooling around." Lee's eyes sparkled with understanding as he gave a firm nod. "Yes, my youthful friend." He, too, began removing his heavy green weights. "Ah, that's so much better," he exclaimed, sighing in relief as the weights came off. Naruto chuckled. "I have to admit, that's true." With a grin, he casually tossed his weights over his shoulder. Lee followed suit, and when their respective ballast crashed into the ground, the crowd gasped in shock. Each weight set created massive craters, but Naruto's crater was significantly larger, so large, in fact, that it dwarfed both of Lee's craters combined. The audience stared in disbelief, murmurs of astonishment rippling through the stands. Even the shinobi in the audience were taken aback, save for Guy, who was beaming with pride at his student and Naruto's impressive display. The moment stretched for only a second before both Naruto and Lee exploded into motion, their bodies moving with lightning speed as they clashed in the center of the arena. Their fists collided with a powerful thud, each boy grinning with exhilaration. For a brief moment, they stood there, locked in place, their strength perfectly matched. Lee broke the stalemate by attempting a sweeping kick, but Naruto leaped over it gracefully. In midair, Naruto spun and brought his heel down in a powerful axe kick aimed at Lee's head. Lee, however, was ready. He raised his forearms in a defensive block, catching Naruto's kick before it could land. Wasting no time, Lee grabbed hold of Naruto's leg, spinning him around with the force of a small tornado before launching him across the arena. Naruto twisted in midair, landing in a crouch just in time to see Lee speeding toward him. The green-clad shinobi tried to stomp on Naruto, but Naruto, showing his own agility, rolled out of the way at the last second. The ground where Naruto had been standing moments before shattered under Lee's foot, cracks spiderwebbing out from the impact. Naruto used the momentum from his roll to rise to his feet in one fluid motion, spinning as he did so. His leg lashed out in a powerful kick, catching Lee square in the chest. The impact sent Lee flying several meters backward before he managed to right himself, landing gracefully on his feet with a grin. The crowd roared with excitement, the intensity of the battle thrilling them. The match was far from over, but it was clear that both Naruto and Lee were holding back, testing the waters, warming up. Naruto smirked, dusting off his hands. "That was a good warm-up, Lee, but don't you think it's time we take off the kitty gloves?" Lee's eyes widened in excitement. "What do you have in mind, my youthful friend?" Naruto's grin widened, his eyes gleaming with determination. "Isn't it obvious? We both know each other too well to fall for simple tricks. It's time to bring out the big guns." Lee's expression grew serious, though his excitement didn't wane. "Are you sure, Naruto-kun? You know I can open more gates than you. It wouldn't be fair." Naruto waved off his concern with a smirk. "And holding back, not giving your all, is fair to who, exactly?" His voice held a challenge now, pushing Lee to let go of any reservations. "We've worked too hard for this, Lee. It's time to show everyone how far two guys without natural talent, but with a lot of determination and even more hard work, can go, right?" Lee's eyes glimmered with realization, the fire of youth burning even brighter within him. "Hi." He nodded with conviction, his hands crossing in front of him as he prepared for what came next. "From this point on, no holding back. Let's show them how brightly the flames of our youth can burn." Naruto grinned in response, his body practically vibrating with energy. "Let's do it." In the audience, near the genin and senseis, the tension was palpable. Asuma took a long drag from his cigarette, his brows furrowing slightly. "Well, Naruto's got an unfair advantage in this one," he remarked. "Lee can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu. It's all taijutsu for him." Guy, sitting nearby, gave a knowing smile. That may be true, Asuma, but Naruto-kun won't use those techniques in this match either. His youthful spirit won't allow him to disrespect Lee's belief in taijutsu. Naruto will fight him with the strength of his own muscles, nothing more. Enko scoffed, her arms crossed. So you're saying that blonde brat's gonna throw out his ninjutsu and fight Lee with just taijutsu? That's a waste of his arsenal. Karen, ever the staunch supporter of her Nisama, smirked. Maybe in most cases, yes, but this isn't about showing off all his techniques. It's about respecting Lee's resolve. Besides, she added with a gleam in her eye, this will remind everyone that Naruto isn't just a ninjutsu expert. His taijutsu is just as impressive. Kurenai nodded thoughtfully. It's a test of their bond as rivals. Naruto's choosing to fight Lee on equal ground. Asuma, exhaling a puff of smoke, watched intently. Well, it'll definitely be a match to remember. Back on the arena floor, Naruto and Lee stood ready, the tension between them palpable. Lee's grin was as wide as ever. Naruto-kun, you are a true rival, and I will give you nothing less than my all. Naruto returned the grin, cracking his neck and rolling his shoulders. Same here, Lee. Now, let's show them what we've got. Without another word, Lee's hands blurred as he released the first gate. The gate of opening, open. Naruto watched as Lee's muscles tensed, his skin beginning to glow faintly from the surge of energy. A fierce gust of wind whipped through the arena, carrying the sheer force of Lee's chakra. The ground cracked beneath Lee's feet as he stood, his entire body thrumming with power. Naruto closed his eyes for a brief moment, focusing his own energy. When his eyes snapped open again, they were filled with the same fierce determination. The first gate, open. The crowd gasped as both boys' chakra flared, the arena floor shaking under the pressure of their combined strength. In that moment, it was clear, this was no ordinary match. This was a clash between two rivals, two shinobi who had defied the odds, and they were ready to give it their all. The stage was set. The real battle was about to begin. As the dust settled from the climactic battle between Naruto and Lee, the awe and tension were palpable not only in the audience but also among the shinobi in the stands. The audience, near the sensei's and Genin's Kakashi's visible eye widened in disbelief as he took in the two boys' stances and the sheer destruction left in their wake. He turned slowly to Guy, giving him a scandalized look. Guy, you didn't. Guy, however, wore a serious expression, his eyes gleaming with pride. I did, Kakashi. Both Naruto and Lee have very youthful dreams, and I will give them every tool to make those dreams a reality. The inner gates were part of that. Kiba, standing nearby, scratched his head, utterly confused. What are you guys talking about? What's the big deal, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi sighed and rubbed the back of his head. Guy taught them a kenjutsu, the ability to open the inner gates. It's a dangerous technique. Opening the gates temporarily boosts a person's power and speed exponentially, but it's a double-edged sword. The body can't withstand it. If someone opens all 8 gates. Kiba's eyes widened, and he interrupted with an excited grin. That sounds awesome. But Kakashi's gaze turned grave. If they open all 8 gates, they'll die. The body burns out from the sheer strain. It's a last resort. Kiba's grin quickly faded. Oh, that's not so awesome. Guy, still watching the arena, nodded solemnly. Yes, the technique is dangerous, but these boys understand their limits. Besides, Naruto can't open as many gates as Lee because of his Uzumaki heritage. Ino blinked in confusion. Wait, how does being an Uzumaki stop Naruto from opening more gates? Akane Kannagi, seated nearby, shook her head with a slight smile, but there was a hint of frustration in her voice. Considering the Uzumaki clan's crest is engraved into Konoha's symbol, and your Chunin and Jonin wear it on their flak jackets. It's rather sad that so many here know so little about the Uzumaki clan. Karui, with her usual bluntness, added, more like pathetic. Karen, standing beside them, took up the explanation. The Uzumaki clan's bodies are stronger than most others. Not only do they hold more chakra, but their chakra networks are more complex. Every cell in an Uzumaki's body holds chakra. This is why our clan was known as the clan of longevity. Like the Senju, we age slower after a certain point. Kiba, still processing, looked puzzled. But what does that have to do with the gates? Karen sighed, giving him a pointed look. If Naruto opens too many gates, the chakra surging through his body would overload him. In short, if he opened too many gates, he would explode from the pressure. Kiba blanched. Oh. That's, yeah, not cool. The arena floor. The intensity in the arena was unlike anything the audience had seen before. Naruto, his clothes fluttering from the residual energy of the opened gates, grinned as he saw Rock Lee standing opposite him, equally charged up. Kaimon, Kai. Kyumon, Kai. Lee shouted as he opened the first two gates. His body glowed with red energy, and the ground beneath him cracked under the force of his chakra. Naruto grinned wildly and bit his thumbs, smearing blood on his arms before slamming his hands together. Seals appeared on his biceps, one with the kanji for 15, the other with the kanji for 8. Kai, he shouted, releasing the seals. His weights, resistance seals he'd been wearing, reduced dramatically. As Lee pushed further, opening the third gate, he called out, Simon, Kai. His skin reddened, and the sheer pressure of his chakra created a small crater beneath him. Let's take it to the hardcore level, Lee. Naruto roared, the excitement in his voice impossible to miss. Lee grinned, his eyes filled with fiery determination. Hi, Naruto-kun. He crossed his arms before him. Shaman, Kai. A brief glow of green chakra enveloped Lee as he opened the fourth gate. Naruto, not to be outdone, opened his own first gate. Kaimon, Kai. Chakra exploded from him, wrapping him in a blue shroud similar to when he had drawn on Kurama's power. The air between them hummed with anticipation as both boys bent their knees, preparing for their next clash. The arena floor cracked under the pressure as both Naruto and Lee shot toward each other, their speed so intense that the ground tore apart in their wake. When they collided in the center, their fists met with a thunderous impact, and for a split second, it seemed like time stopped. The air between their fists was sucked in, and then a shockwave exploded outward, shattering a large portion of the arena floor. The dust cloud was blown away as both fighters began trading blows at speeds almost impossible to follow. Each hit sent a shockwave through the air, rippling across the battlefield. Their movements were so fast that even the seasoned shinobi in the audience had trouble keeping track. For a solid minute, the arena was filled with the deafening sound of fists and feet colliding, the sheer force of their attacks leaving craters and cracks all over the arena floor. Then, after a particularly powerful exchange, both Naruto and Lee delivered simultaneous kicks to each other's midsections, sending the other flying across the arena. But before they could crash into the walls, they vanished in a burst of speed. The audience gasped as they reappeared in midair, where Naruto buried his knee into Lee's stomach, causing him to spit out blood. Another shockwave followed the impact, forcing many spectators to shield their faces from the wind and debris. Before the dust could settle, they vanished again, appearing in different sections of the arena, each time exchanging brutal blows. Lee landed a powerful punch to Naruto's gut, sending him flying back. The pattern repeated at least 10 times, each fighter pushing the other to the limit. Their hits were so powerful that they were only visible to the audience when one landed an attack. Finally, they both appeared in the center of the arena again, hitting each other in the face simultaneously. The force of their punches sent each boy careening toward the walls, but both managed to right themselves mid-air, using their legs to push off the ground and stop just before crashing into the walls. Panting heavily, Naruto looked across the arena at Lee, who was equally exhausted but smiling through the pain. "Let's end it, Lee, with one final attack," Naruto shouted, his voice filled with determination. "Hi! I will not lose today. I'll show you the fruits of my youthful training with my strongest move," Lee shouted back, taking a familiar stance as he opened the sixth gate. "Taman, Kai!" Naruto, his eyes gleaming with excitement, leapt onto the wall, standing a few meters above the ground. "Kyumon, Kai," he roared, opening his second gate. "Let's do this." In an instant, both boys shot toward each other, their bodies cloaked in auras of pure energy. As they charged, their chakra manifested in the forms of a red and black tiger around Lee and a golden dragon around Naruto. Shuryo Tora, hunting tiger. Kojin Ryu, descending dragon. The two attacks met in the center of the arena, creating a blinding light that forced everyone to shield their eyes. The resulting explosion rocked the entire stadium, and for a long, tense minute, the entire arena was filled with dust and debris. The audience held their breath as they waited for the dust to settle. Slowly, the forms of two boys became visible, both standing a good distance apart, battered and bruised, but still standing. Lee's jumpsuit had been torn to shreds in several places, with his sleeves completely missing and one sandal gone. Naruto's clothing was equally tattered, though to the shock of the audience, his clothes seemed to be slowly repairing themselves. "You have to teach me that move," Naruto said between labored breaths, wiping some blood from his lip. "It would be perfect with my circumstances." Lee, equally exhausted, grinned back. "As long as you teach me one of your youthful moves, my eternal rival." "You're on," Naruto replied with a grin. "You were really close today. Next time, I will surely beat you, Naruto-kun." Lee's voice trailed off as his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Genma stepped forward, raising his arm. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." His voice echoed through the arena as the stadium erupted into thunderous cheers. The medics rushed in to attend to both boys as the crowd continued to roar their approval. Once the medics were tending to Naruto and Lee, Genma raised his voice again. "Due to the damage to the arena, there will be a 1-hour recess to repair it." But the audience barely paid attention, still buzzing with excitement from the incredible battle they had just witnessed. Top of form in the stands, Karen's enthusiastic voice rang out, echoing above the cheers of the audience. "Yoo-hoo! You're awesome, Enai-sama." Her pride was evident as she beamed, watching Naruto get carried off for medical attention. Beside her, Karui was still processing the intensity of the fight. "I can see now what you meant when you said Ayano couldn't win against that guy," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Kiba, however, was not taking it so well. His jaw dropped as he tried to grasp what had just happened. "How the hell is that even possible? Naruto was the dobe of our class. He can't be that strong." Tenten, standing nearby, crossed her arms and looked at Kiba with a smirk. As a matter of fact, Lee was also the dobe of our class. Those titles from the academy mean nothing in the real world. But, Kiba stuttered, clearly not ready to accept the shift in the power dynamics among his peers. "No buts, dog boy," came Anko's voice, dripping with amusement. "The Gaki is strong. Deal with it." Asuma, leaning casually against the railing, nodded in agreement. "And they're just 13 and 14. Can you imagine what they'll be like when they're older? They're going to be monsters." A contemplative Kurenai murmured to herself, "I need to train more." Seeing Naruto and Lee in action had stirred a sense of competitiveness in her. Taijutsu had always been her weakest area, and now seeing two genin surpass her in raw physical combat stung her pride. In the Hyuga section, the usually stoic Hayashi Hyuga finally cracked a rare smile at the sight of Naruto and Lee being carried off. His wife, Hina, leaned toward him with a teasing smile. "Are you still worried that Naruto won't be able to protect our daughter?" she asked. Hayashi gave a thoughtful hum. "Well, he certainly has some skills," he admitted, and the surrounding members of the Hyuga clan nodded in agreement. Beside them, Hanabi, her eyes wide with awe, whispered, "That was awesome." Her admiration for the two boys was clear, and her parents couldn't help but chuckle at her starry-eyed expression. In the Kage booth, the air was thick with conversation as the Kages discussed the match they had just witnessed. "You sure have some skilled shinobi, Hokage Dano," remarked Mei Terumi, the Mizukage, her eyes gleaming with admiration. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, nodded proudly. "Yes, I'm proud of both of them." Likuan showed the entire world that even without ninjutsu or genjutsu, one can still be a formidable shinobi. The Raikage, crossed his arms, his deep voice gruff. While he didn't show much strategy, the sheer determination needed to pull off those techniques shows us that the boy has the willpower to be a chunin. The Tsuchikage, Anoki, who was known for being more cautious and critical, raised an eyebrow. "You're quite generous, Raikage Dano." "Maybe," I replied, "but it would be a waste to hold back a warrior like that." "I agree," Mei chimed in. "The boy needs a little polishing, but I believe the responsibilities of Chunin rank will help refine him." Hiruzen nodded again, pleased with the consensus. "I believe so too. Lee has a bright future ahead of him." Mei then turned her attention to Naruto. "And Naruto-kun, he showed once again that his abilities are far beyond those of a typical Chunin. He can use kenjutsu, multiple nature transformations, and strategic thinking to his advantage. And if all else fails, he can hold his own with just his fists. He's versatile in a way that few shinobi are." The Raikage, never one to mince words, added, "That brat might be arrogant and a little stupid." His tone was mocking, but there was an underlying respect there. "But I'd classify him as an A-rank threat already if we were enemies." Hiruzen chuckled, his eyes twinkling with a playful light. "Then it's a good thing we're not enemies, Raikage Dano." The Kazekage, quiet until now, glanced at Hiruzen thoughtfully. "Hokage Dano, were you aware that something like this would happen, or did you station your Earth users here to rebuild the arena as a precaution?" Hiruzen chuckled, a glint of amusement in his eye. "Those boys destroyed 8 different training grounds during their sparring sessions. I thought it prudent to have a team on standby to repair the arena if they ever faced each other." His tone was one of pride, mixed with a touch of exasperation. The other Kages couldn't help but laugh softly at that, the tension of the earlier battle easing into lighter conversation. Hiruzen then gestured to the catering stand. "Shall we get something to eat while we wait for the next match?" Back in the arena, the dust from the last fight had settled, and it was time for the next match. Genma, ever the calm and collected proctor, stepped forward and called out to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Chunin exams are ready to restart," he announced, his voice carrying across the arena. "The next match is Sakura Haruno vs Shikamaru Nara. Are both contestants ready?" Both genin, standing on opposite sides of the arena, nodded in confirmation. "Then Hajime," Genma declared, signaling the start of the match. Sakura wasted no time. She wasn't in the mood for idle banter or mind games, especially against someone like Shikamaru. In one smooth motion, she flung 3 kunai at him. Shikamaru, ever the strategist, calmly deflected the kunai with 3 perfectly timed shuriken, sending them clattering to the ground harmlessly. But Sakura wasn't done. She charged forward, quickly forming hand seals. "Bunshin no jutsu," she cried out, and in a puff of smoke, 5 clones appeared alongside her, all rushing toward Shikamaru in unison. Shikamaru, however, remained in his usual crouched, lazy posture, his face unreadable as the 6 Sakuras descended on him. The audience watched, tense and excited, as each of the clones aimed a punch at the Nara boy. In an instant, 5 of the clones disappeared in a puff of smoke as Shikamaru expertly blocked their attacks. But one fist remained, seemingly connecting with Shikamaru's face. Just as the audience thought Sakura had landed a hit, Shikamaru's voice cut through the air, calm and composed as ever. Kagemain no Jutsu, complete. Sakura's fist stopped inches from Shikamaru's face, frozen in place. Shikamaru slowly stood up, his shadow seamlessly connected to hers. Sakura's eyes widened in surprise. He caught me. With a lazy smirk, Shikamaru looked her directly in the eyes. I'd say, this is troublesome. The match was only beginning, but Shikamaru's shadow possession had already turned the tides. The real battle of wits was about to unfold, and the crowd was on the edge of their seats, waiting to see who would outsmart the other. Top of form in the contestants' booth, Naruto, limping slightly but full of energy, approached his teammate, Sasuke, who stood watching the match unfold below. Hey, team. What did I miss? Naruto asked, his eyes scanning the arena. Sasuke gave Naruto a sideways glance, raising an eyebrow. Where were you, Dobe? Kabuto held me up in the infirmary, Naruto replied, still looking at the arena. Apparently, opening those gates was a stupid idea or something. He shook his head dismissively, then his eyes widened as he saw Sakura down in the arena. Oh man, it's already Sakura-chan's match? I wanted to wish her good luck before her fight. Sasuke smirked. Well, I'm sure she could have used it. She just lost her match. Naruto blinked in confusion. Lost? Just because her clone got caught in Shikamaru's jutsu? Hinata, standing nearby, gasped in surprise. Clone? Naruto grinned, crossing his arms confidently. Come on, I've made millions of clones. I'd like to think I can tell when I see one. On the arena floor, Shikamaru, looking bored as ever, held a kunai to Sakura's throat, assuming victory was in his hands. You lost, so it would be less troublesome if you just gave up, he said lazily. But before he could celebrate, a smirk crept onto Sakura's face. His eyes widened as, in a sudden rush of water, Sakura dissolved into liquid, revealing herself to have been a water clone all along. Shikamaru barely had time to process what had happened before a kunai landed at his feet, a sizzling explosive note attached to it. Thinking quickly, he substituted with a large stone from the edge of the arena. The explosion rang out, destroying the stone, only for it to shatter into sharp shrapnel that flew in all directions. Shikamaru winced in pain as 2 pieces of stone lodged themselves into his right thigh. The pain made him lose concentration, just for a split second, but that was all Sakura needed. She burst out of her hiding spot and landed a powerful punch right to Shikamaru's jaw, sending him flying across the arena floor. Ha! You thought I'd be that easy to beat? Sakura shouted, her fists clenched. I may not be as strong as Sasuke or Naruto, but I wasn't the kunoichi of the year for nothing. As Shikamaru spat out 2 teeth, he grimaced and muttered to himself, how did Naruto manage to survive years of those hits? Wiping the blood from his mouth, he sighed. You're really a troublesome girl, you know that? Sakura smirked back. In your mouth, that's almost a compliment. But it won't change the fact that I'm going to win this match. Without wasting a second, she flung another set of kunai at him. This time, Shikamaru decided to avoid them rather than block. He jumped to the left, narrowly dodging the kunai. However, he quickly realized it was a trap. One of the kunai had ricocheted and would have hit him had he jumped to the right. Sakura had calculated his moves perfectly. As Shikamaru was still in the air, Sakura quickly went through hand seals and pointed her open palm toward him. Suetun, Mizu Boru no Jutsu, she called, and the remaining water from her clone rose from the ground, forming a football-sized sphere that shot toward Shikamaru with surprising speed. Unprepared for another ninjutsu, Shikamaru couldn't defend himself in time. The water sphere slammed into his chest. But what happened next shocked everyone. Shikamaru's body crumbled into mud upon impact, spraying across the arena floor. A substitution. Sakura's eyes widened in disbelief, but before she could react, her body stiffened. She couldn't move. Kagemain no Jutsu, complete, came Shikamaru's voice from behind a large rock at the edge of the arena. Stepping out from his hiding spot, Shikamaru dusted himself off and looked over at Sakura, who stood frozen in place, her shadow now connected to his. I have to admit, Sakura, I underestimated you. For an ex-fangirl to know not one but two elemental jutsu, that's pretty impressive. He glanced down at the kunai scattered around the arena floor. But as troublesome as it is, you still lost. Had you not thrown all those kunai so recklessly, I wouldn't have been able to reach you with my. Suddenly, Shikamaru's body trembled, and he dropped to one knee, breaking into a sweat. His shadow retracted, and his hold on Sakura was gone. What did you do? He panted, his chakra reserve suddenly drained. Sakura's lips curled into a smirk as she regained her movement. You mean, how did you lose most of your chakra, right? She sauntered toward him confidently, picking up one of the kunai she had thrown earlier. I bought a few chakra storage seals from the cutting leaf. I applied them to the handles of all my kunai. So, when you used my kunai to extend your shadow, the seals drained your chakra. Shikamaru's eyes widened. So it was all a trap. Not exactly, Sakura said, her expression proud but honest. I researched your clan during the past month. Your family is known for being lazy geniuses, and your father's the Jonin commander, so I knew you'd be a tough opponent. I set a plan, but those kunai? They weren't part of it. I couldn't plan for everything, so I took a risk. Shikamaru chuckled weakly, shaking his head. Troublesome girl. I guess luck was on your side. Sakura smiled. So, what will you do now? You're out of chakra, and I'm not even tired. Shikamaru sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his head. So troublesome. Proctor, I give up. He raised his hand in defeat, a lazy smirk still on his face despite the outcome. Winner of this match, Sakura Haruno. Genma's voice rang out through the arena as the crowd erupted into cheers. Sakura couldn't contain her joy and immediately ran back toward the contestants' booth, her heart soaring with pride. Meanwhile, Shikamaru, limping slightly from the injuries to his leg, casually made his way toward the stands. In the contestants' booth, Naruto and Sasuke watched as Sakura raced back up toward them, a wide smile plastered on her face. She did it. Naruto cheered, pumping his fist into the air. Sasuke, still leaning against the railing, smirked and shook his head slightly. I have to admit, she's come a long way. When Sakura arrived, Naruto greeted her with a beaming smile. That was awesome, Sakura-chan. You really took him down. Sakura blushed a little at Naruto's praise but grinned back proudly. Thanks, Naruto. But I wouldn't have been able to do it without all that training we did this past month. Sasuke gave her a small nod of approval. You planned well. Shikamaru's no easy opponent. Sakura felt her heart swell with pride at the acknowledgement from both her teammates. We trained hard, and it's paying off, she said, a determined glint in her eyes. Hinata, who had been watching nearby, smiled softly. Congratulations, Sakura. You really deserve it. Thanks, Hinata. Sakura said, still riding the high of her victory. As they all exchanged words of encouragement and praise, Naruto couldn't help but feel the excitement build for his next match. This Chunin exam was shaping up to be unforgettable, for all of them. Kage booth. The atmosphere in the Kage booth was lighter now after witnessing the impressive display from the Konoha genin. Mei Terumi, the Mizukage, glanced at Hiruzen Sarutobi with an appreciative smile. Well, Hokage Dano, you certainly have many talents in your village, she said, her tone light and impressed. Hiruzen chuckled, his wise old eyes gleaming with pride. Why thank you, Mizukage Dano. I'm pleased that even in these times of peace, this generation has not weakened. It shows that peace is not a dream for weak people, as my old wayward teammate, Orochimaru, used to claim. The Raikage leaned forward, resting his muscular arms on his knees. So far, aside from that Hyuga boy, it seems we've got a few new Chunin prospects. Inoki, the Tsuchikage, stroked his beard thoughtfully. Indeed. This generation is brimming with talent. I'm especially curious to see how the Uchiha boy fares against your Yuki clan boy, Mizukage Dano. Mei's eyes twinkled mischievously. Oh, Tsuchikage Dano, do I sense some lingering resentment in your voice? She teased. Hiruzen, with a slight smirk, added, you wouldn't be holding Madara's actions against the rest of the Uchiha, would you? Inoki fell silent for a moment, his old eyes narrowing slightly, but he didn't respond immediately. After a few seconds, he finally grumbled, humph. The Raikage, always one to speak his mind, scoffed loudly. That's stupid, he said bluntly. If anyone in this generation is likely to become as monstrous as the Shodame Hokage or Madara, it's that blonde Uzumaki brat. He's the one to watch. Raza, the Kazekage, turned his masked face toward intrigued. You seem to have a lot of faith in the Uzumaki boy, Raikage Dano. Across his arms, his stern expression softening slightly with grudging respect. It's not faith. He beat down the only participant from my village. That alone is proof enough that he'll win this tournament. The audience, Genin and Sensei section as Shikamaru approached the group, dragging his feet with his usual lazy expression, Ino called out to him, her voice teasing. Hey, Shikamaru, I thought you were going to give up immediately, but you actually put up a decent fight. Shikamaru scratched the back of his head, clearly uninterested in any sort of praise. Yeah. Was all he muttered in response. Asuma, however, was beaming with pride as he clapped his hand on Shikamaru's shoulder. I must say, I'm proud of you, Shikamaru. You did well. After the finals, I'm taking all of you out for dinner. And hey, Choji, he added with a grin, you can even bring your girlfriend. Choji's face turned bright red, and Ino couldn't help but snicker at her sensei's teasing. Sensei. Choji stammered, flustered. Karen, meanwhile, stood watching the match unfold with her arms crossed. Well, at least Sakura isn't totally useless anymore, she said, almost as if she were grudgingly acknowledging Sakura's growth. I would have felt bad for Nisama if she was still a weak fangirl. Akane, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. So. Naruto-kun like Sakura-san? She asked boldly, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Yeah, Karen answered without hesitation, as though it were common knowledge. Though for some reason, he won't ask her out, or any other girl, for that matter. Karen shrugged, not seeing anything wrong with admitting her brother's affections. Akane mused, a playful smile tugging at her lips. It'll be entertaining to watch that boy's love life in the future. He'll break his fair share of hearts, I'm sure. The Kannagi matriarch's words earned nods of agreement from some of the jonin nearby, and even Anko, ever the cynic, raised an eyebrow as if to say, this should be interesting. With the kind of strength and potential this generation is showing, their personal lives might be just as chaotic as their battles, Anko quipped, grinning. Asuma chuckled softly, still watching the arena. This generation is something else, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. We've got a lot of talent coming up. Kurenai nodded in agreement. They're all growing so fast. It's hard to believe they were all just fresh out of the academy not too long ago. Akane smirked. This generation is certainly promising. With the right guidance, they'll be the ones to shape the future. Back in the Kage booth, as the Chunin exam matches continued, the leaders of the villages exchanged knowing looks, all silently acknowledging the same truth: the future of the shinobi world was in very capable hands. The potential they had witnessed so far was just the beginning, and each of these young genin, Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, and all the others, was destined to leave a mark on history. In the contestant booth as Sasuke jumped down to the arena, Naruto, still grinning from ear to ear, praised Sakura. "You were awesome, Sakura-chan. Outsmarting a Nara by not overthinking things. That was so, like you." Sasuke's voice cut in, dripping with sarcasm. "You're good at not thinking, period." Naruto shot him a glare. "Tell me that after I kick your ass, that is, if you manage to beat Haku." Sakura, still smiling from Naruto's compliment, ignored the boy's banter. "Thank you, Naruto." Her voice was soft, but then, without warning, she smacked Naruto on the head, hard. "Baka! Why didn't you use any ninjutsu during your match with Lee? Do you know how worried I was?" Her words came out in a flustered rush, and as she realized what she'd said, a slight blush crept over her cheeks. Naruto blinked, rubbing the top of his head in confusion, his eyes wide with surprise. "Why you were worried?" Before the moment could become too awkward, Sasuke saved them both from further embarrassment. "He couldn't use any jutsu, Sakura. The gates make the chakra circulate too fast. It's a technique for taijutsu users only." Sakura's brow furrowed, clearly concerned. "What do you mean?" Sasuke explained calmly, his tone matter-of-fact. "According to one of the scrolls in the Uchiha library, one of my clansmen tried to use healing jutsu while he had two gates open. His chakra pathways collapsed, and the raw chakra damaged his organs. He died not long after. The gates make it impossible to use ninjutsu without killing yourself." Naruto grinned and dramatically clutched his hoodie over his heart, pretending to be wounded. "You thought I would lose to Lee?" he gasped, feigning hurt. Sasuke smirked. "It's always better to be safe than sorry." Sakura, though still concerned, couldn't help but smile a little at their usual back and forth. "But if it's that dangerous, why even learn it?" Naruto waved her concern away dismissively. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is a kenjutsu too, and that didn't stop me from learning it. Besides, in our line of work, every jutsu can be dangerous if you don't know how to use it. You can't worry too much." Sakura crossed her arms and glared at him. "But you can't worry too little, Baka." Before Naruto could respond, Genma's voice rang out across the arena. "Will Sasuke Uchiha and Haku Yuki come down to the arena?" Sasuke, without missing a beat, turned to Naruto. "Well, it's time for me." He gave one last smirk before jumping over the railing, landing effortlessly on the arena floor. As Sakura watched him go, she turned back to Naruto, her brow creased with worry. "Do you think he'll win?" Naruto grinned confidently, his arms crossed. "He's too stubborn to lose before facing me and Gaara." On the arena floor, Sasuke stood across from Haku, his Sharingan already active, the two tomo spinning slowly in each eye. The tension between them was palpable, both fighters knowing this was going to be a difficult battle. Genma raised his hand, ensuring both were ready. "Are you both ready?" he asked. The two boys nodded in unison. "Hajime." As soon as the word left Genma's mouth, Sasuke and Haku dashed toward each other, wasting no time. Sasuke hurled kunai at Haku, but the kunai were effortlessly deflected by Haku's Senbon. The two met in a clash of steel, kunai against Senbon, as they fought for dominance. Their movements were fluid, swift, and precise, neither one willing to give ground. Haku's one-handed hand seals were fast, but Sasuke, noticing the movement, capitalized on the opening. With a swift kick, Sasuke aimed at Haku's unprotected side. But instead of feeling the impact, Haku's body dissolved into water, the real Haku had never been there. A water clone. Sasuke quickly activated his Sharingan fully, the two tomo spinning faster now as he scanned the area. His heightened perception caught a glimpse of movement to his right. Reacting instantly, he jumped just in time to avoid four Senbon that were aimed directly at his neck. Landing gracefully, he spun on his heel and delivered a powerful kick to Haku's chest, sending the masked boy flying backward. Without wasting a second, Sasuke flew through hand seals. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. A massive fireball erupted from Sasuke's mouth, roaring toward Haku. Haku remained calm, his own hands moving in a blur. Suetun, Suijin Hiki. A wall of water formed in front of him, blocking the fireball. The resulting collision created a thick cloud of steam that quickly filled the arena, obscuring both fighters from view. In the thick mist, Haku's training under Zabuza came into play. Silent killing. Without making a sound, Haku created two water clones and positioned them in a triangle around Sasuke's location. Using the cover of the steam, Haku moved in silently for the attack. Sasuke, relying on his heightened senses and the Sharingan's ability to track movement, dodged most of the attacks, but he wasn't fast enough to avoid them all. Several Senbon pierced his left shoulder, and three more lodged themselves in his right thigh just above the knee. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Sasuke knew he couldn't keep this up for long. As the steam began to clear, Sasuke quickly dealt with the two water clones, his shuriken slicing through them with ease. He then flung more shuriken at Haku, but the masked boy ducked under them while closing the distance between them. Once again, they clashed, kunai against Senbon. This time, however, Haku moved faster, his one-handed hand seals coming into play again. Sasuke, slowed by the needles in his leg, couldn't react in time. Sensatsu Susho. Haku called out, and the water from the earlier exchange rose into the air, forming hundreds of sharp, deadly water needles. The needles surrounded Sasuke from every direction. "Let's see you avoid this," Haku said quietly before sending all the needles flying at once. Sasuke, thinking quickly, channeled chakra into the soles of his feet, enhancing his speed as he leaped into the air, narrowly avoiding the deadly barrage. Mid-air, he yanked the Senbon out of his thigh and shoulder, grimacing in pain. But as he landed, something felt off. What the? Sasuke thought, his eyes widening. It shouldn't be this cold. Before he could process the sudden drop in temperature, he was trapped. Ice mirrors rose up around him, surrounding him on all sides. Haku's voice echoed from within one of the mirrors. Yuki Hijitsu, Makio Hyosho. Haku's form appeared within one of the ice mirrors, his reflection flickering in all the others. "Now, Uchiha Sasuke, our real fight begins," he said before stepping into one of the mirrors completely, his form blurring as it merged with the ice. Sasuke stood in the center of the ice dome, his Sharingan eyes darting around, trying to follow Haku's movements. The battle had taken a deadly turn, and now Sasuke had to figure out how to counter this unique and powerful technique. In the contestant booth, Sakura's eyes widened in shock as she watched the ice mirrors rise around Sasuke in the arena. "What the hell is this?" she gasped, her voice full of concern. Hinata, standing nearby, quietly explained, the Yuki clan possesses the Hayatan Kekkei Genkai. Since it's a Hijitsu, this must be one of their strongest or most deadly jutsu. Either way, Sasuke-san is in trouble. Naruto, however, remained calm, his eyes narrowed as he analyzed the situation. That jutsu can be bypassed easily if team would attack those mirrors from both inside and outside at the same time, he said after a few moments, his gaze focused on the unfolding battle. Sakura turned to him, still worried. "Is it really that easy?" she asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Yes," Naruto replied without hesitation, "but I don't think team will do it." "What? Why not?" Sakura asked, clearly frustrated and confused by Naruto's cryptic response. Naruto finally looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "People are taking these exams for different reasons," he began, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Some want to show off their strength, or the strength of their village. Some want to prove they're not weak anymore." He glanced at both Sakura and Hinata, acknowledging their personal growth. "And then there are people like me, Sasuke, and Gaara. We're not here to show off or to prove anything. We're here to test ourselves against strong opponents. For us, it's about the sheer excitement that comes from fighting someone as strong, or even stronger, than we are." Sakura stared at Naruto, still processing his words. His motivations had always seemed so simple, so straightforward. But now, seeing the fire in his eyes, she began to understand just how deeply Naruto craved a challenge, how much he valued the thrill of a true battle. On the arena floor, Sasuke stood inside Haku's Makio Hyosho, the ice mirrors shimmering all around him, trapping him. His Sharingan eyes, now fully evolved with 3 tomo in each eye, tracked every movement Haku made, though it was still difficult to keep up with the sheer speed of his opponent. "Damn it, Sasuke. Keep it together," he thought to himself, his breaths ragged as he stood up after enduring yet another barrage of Senbon needles. His body ached, but he wasn't out of the fight yet. "Those damn needles. Alright, calm down. Breathe in. Breathe out." He focused, his muscles tightening as he prepared for the next attack. Haku, noticing the sudden shift in Sasuke's movements, furrowed his brow from within one of the mirrors. Something had changed. Sasuke was dodging more of his attacks, something that shouldn't have been possible inside the mirrors. His speed should have been overwhelming. Realizing that he needed to step up the pace, Haku pushed chakra through his legs and launched himself toward Sasuke with incredible speed, aiming to end the fight quickly. But Sasuke had seen it coming. He waited until the very last moment before diving under Haku's attack, rolling to the side as Haku shot past him. Simultaneously, Sasuke's hands blurred through a series of hand seals. The moment he finished, he spun on his feet and locked his gaze on Haku, who had just landed within range. "Raitun, Kangekiha!" Sasuke shouted, pouring more chakra into the technique than was necessary, but the result was exactly what he wanted. Lightning surged from his hands, striking Haku directly. The surge of electricity crackled violently as it hit the ice user, stunning him completely. Haku let out a sharp gasp as the mirrors around them shattered into shards, collapsing the jutsu. Taking full advantage of the opening, Sasuke channeled chakra into his legs, enhancing his speed as he dashed toward Haku. He delivered a fierce kick to Haku's jaw, sending the masked boy flying into the air. Not wasting any time, Sasuke crouched low, then leaped after him. Mid-air, Sasuke spun around, delivering a powerful backhand strike that sent Haku crashing into the ground. Sasuke followed immediately, twisting his body into a somersault before driving his heel into Haku's stomach as he hit the ground. The force of the blow sent a shockwave through the arena floor. "Shirsha Rendan," Sasuke declared, finishing the technique with a final, brutal strike. Haku lay unconscious on the ground, the strength of Sasuke's attacks having overwhelmed him. Sasuke, breathing heavily, stood beside his fallen opponent. His body ached from the Senbon and the use of his chakra, but he had won. He glanced at Genma, who was approaching to check on Haku. After a quick examination, Genma raised his arm and signaled to the medics. "Winner of the match, Uchiha Sasuke." The audience erupted into cheers, but Sasuke barely acknowledged them. His expression was cool, indifferent, as he turned and began walking back toward the contestant booth. The victory didn't matter to him. He wasn't here to win the approval of the crowd, he was here to challenge himself. In the Kage booth, Hiruzen Sarutobi watched the match with keen interest, his eyes narrowing slightly as he observed the use of ice techniques. "You have a very gifted genin." Mizukage Dano, he said, turning to Mei. An ice user, no less. I thought the Hayaton bloodline was one of many lost during the unsavory events in Mizu no Kuni. Mei Terumi nodded solemnly, her expression tinged with sadness. Unfortunately, Haku-kun is the last surviving member of the Yuki clan. His skills are impressive, but it seems your Uchiha Genin still won the match. The Raikage, grumbled from his seat, crossing his arms over his chest. Yes, it seems Konoha is once again taking the largest share of this cake. Mei chuckled softly, turning her gaze toward the Hokage. You certainly have a lot of gifted genin, Hokage Dano. Most of them are rookies, too, am I right? Hiruzen smiled warmly, his pride evident in his voice. Yes. Most of these children are highly motivated, each for their own reasons. But nonetheless, I am very proud of each and every one of them. He then glanced at the Raikage. Though we shouldn't forget about the promising shinobi from other villages. Anoki, the Tsuchikage, scoffed lightly, a smirk on his wrinkled face. Yes, soon my granddaughter will show you all that she's the best in this competition. Mei raised an eyebrow, a teasing glint in her eyes. Such arrogance does not fit someone of your standing, Tsuchikage Dano. Anoki chuckled, unfazed by the comment. Say that after the match, Mizukage Dano. The Raikage chimed in, his deep voice rumbling with mild amusement. I've seen footage from the last stage. She's strong, I'll give her that, but nowhere near the level of that blonde brat. The other Kages turned to look at surprised by the remark. Hiruzen chuckled softly, shaking his head. What? You've taken quite an interest in Naruto-kun, haven't you, Raikage Dano? Grunted in response, his tone becoming defensive. What? I'm just stating facts. The brat's got talent. But that doesn't mean I like him. Hiruzen's laughter deepened, his old eyes twinkling with amusement. If I didn't know about your rivalry, I might have thought otherwise. Ha! Never. Raikage snapped, sounding almost childish in his denial. The other Kages shared knowing smiles, though none pressed him further. As the medics carried Haku away and the arena prepared for the next match, the Kages quietly reflected on the potential of this new generation of shinobi. Each genin that had stepped into the arena had shown not only their skill but their heart, and for the leaders of the villages, it was a sign that the future was indeed bright. In the contestant booth Naruto, with his usual cheeky grin, gave Sasuke a sarcastic bow. You did it, team, even if you had to steal Lee's move, he teased, his tone playful but with a clear edge of approval. Sasuke, not missing a beat, smirked back at his blonde teammate. I might have used Lee's move, but I tweaked it at the end to create an original technique, dobe. He crossed his arms, clearly satisfied with himself. If it makes you feel better, I'll apologize to Lee later for using his move without asking. Naruto raised an eyebrow in surprise. Wait. You're going to apologize? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Don't get used to it. Sakura, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke up. You did well, Sasuke-kun, she said with a proud smile. Yeah, well. I couldn't be the only one who lost my match, Sasuke said, glancing at Naruto. I wouldn't hear the end of it from the dobe. Naruto gave a wide grin, clearly enjoying the banter. Of course, Dadabayo. As Sasuke took a seat to rest, Naruto looked down toward the arena floor and saw Kuratsuchi heading to her fight. Good luck, he shouted, giving her a thumbs up. Arena floor Genma stood between the two next contestants, his sanbon dangling from his lips as always. His voice echoed through the arena as he announced the next match. Next match, Kuratsuchi vs Chojuro. Are you both ready? Both Kuratsuchi and Chojuro nodded, their eyes locked in on each other, assessing their opponent. Hajime. Gunma. Declared, stepping back as the battle began. Unlike the previous matches, neither of the genin rushed in immediately. Both took their time, watching each other, trying to determine the best course of action. The tension was palpable as the crowd waited for someone to make the first move. After a good half-minute of stillness, Kuratsuchi, growing impatient, decided to take the initiative. She knew that going into close combat against a skilled swordsman like Chojuro would be reckless, so she jumped back and quickly performed a series of hand seals. The moment she landed, she slammed her hands on the ground. Doton, Tsuchibunshin no Jutsu. 5 earth clones emerged around her and immediately rushed toward Chojuro. Chojuro, seeing the incoming clones, swiftly unstrapped his massive sword, Hiramakerii, and blocked the punch from the first clone. However, he was immediately kicked from the side by a second clone, forcing him to stumble back. Before he could recover, a third clone attempted to leap onto him from behind. Reacting quickly, Chojuro spun on his heel, swinging Hiramakerii in a wide arc. The blade cut through the third clone effortlessly, turning it into rubble. Sensing more danger, he jumped back just in time to avoid a vicious heel kick from the fourth clone that slammed into the ground where he had been standing. Springing into action, Chojuro cut down 2 more of the clones with precise strikes. The clones, not expecting such swift counters, crumbled under the blows. But as Chojuro rushed to deal with the last clone, he was blindsided by the 5th one that burst from the ground and delivered a solid punch to his chin, knocking him off balance. Watching from a distance, Kuratsuchi smirked to herself, her sharp eyes tracking every movement. I need to finish this fast. He's getting more confident with every clone he takes down, she thought, biting her lip in concentration. If I wait too long, I'll have to go all out just to take him down. Think, Kuratsuchi, think. Her gaze shifted toward the hole her clone had created earlier. Alright, that might work. Meanwhile, Chojuro, now more determined, cut down the last clone with a final slash, but as he caught his breath, the real Kuratsuchi appeared in front of him. Shit! I forgot about the real one, he berated himself as Kuratsuchi delivered a surprisingly light kick to his chest. It wasn't the force of the kick that surprised him, it was what happened next. As Chojuro stumbled back from the kick, his right leg got caught in the hole left by the previous clone. His eyes widened in realization. What? But it was already too late. Kuratsuchi's hands slammed onto the ground, and with a shout, she unleashed her jutsu. Doton, Doryuso. Earth spears erupted from the ground, stabbing into Chojuro's trapped leg. He screamed in pain as the spears shredded through the flesh, sending blood splattering across the arena floor. You've lost, Kuratsuchi said, standing up with a confident smirk. That was a stupid mistake. With a leg like that, you can't win this match. You simply can't keep up with me anymore. Chojuro, despite the searing pain in his leg, growled in frustration, his eyes narrowing with determination. No, he shouted, gripping his sword tightly. In one fluid motion, he transformed Hiramakerii into a massive battle hammer. With a roar, he swung the hammer into the ground, shattering the earth and freeing his leg. To the shock of the audience, Chojuro, with blood pouring from his wounded leg, let out a mighty battle cry and charged at Kuratsuchi with a complete disregard for his injury. His sword, now glowing with chakra, swung wildly as he closed the distance. What the hell? How is he even moving with that leg? Kuratsuchi thought, barely managing to jump out of the way of one of his powerful swings. Each swing from the hammer sent a wave of chakra through the air, and Kuratsuchi could feel the increase in his speed and strength. He's even faster than before. From the sidelines, Genma watched with growing concern. Damn. With a leg like that, he needs immediate treatment, or this will be his last tournament, the proctor thought grimly. He glanced up at the Hokage, who gave him a subtle nod, signaling him to stop the match. Damn it. I hate my job sometimes. In a flash, Genma appeared between the two genin, raising his arms. That's enough. This match is. Before Genma could finish, he had to jump back, narrowly avoiding a berserk swing from Chojuro's hammer. I don't think he gives a flying fuck. Kuratsuchi shouted, still dodging the wild attacks as Chojuro's bloodied form lunged at her with a roar. In the contestant booth, Naruto watched with wide eyes as Chojuro, despite his injury, continued to fight with a ferocity that surprised everyone. Whoa, that guy's a total beast, he exclaimed, clearly impressed. Sakura, standing beside him, shook her head. He should stop. He's going to hurt himself even more. Hinata, her Byakugan active, looked worried. His leg, it's in bad shape. If this continues, he might not be able to fight again. Naruto, for once, fell silent, his gaze still locked on the battle below. He could feel the desperation and determination pouring out of Chojuro man. He muttered, understanding that feeling all too well. He's not gonna quit, is he? Back on the arena floor, the tension continued to rise as Chojuro, bloodied and enraged, pressed forward. The match was quickly spiraling out of control, and the outcome was uncertain as Genma desperately tried to regain control of the situation. Kage booth. As the situation in the arena escalated, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, narrowed his eyes. What is going on, Mizukage Dano? He asked, his tone calm but with clear concern. Mei Terumi, the Mizukage, sighed, her expression conflicted. Chojuro has been overtaken by his instincts, battle rage is what you're seeing. We've tried to train it out of him, but without a proper trainer in instinct control, it's hard to manage. Hiruzen nodded, though his gaze remained sharp. Has this happened before? Mei's lips tightened. Yes. Once during the final battle against Yagura, when he wounded him before being knocked out, and another time when his original Genin team and his Jonin, Kurosaki Raiga, were slaughtered by a boy wielding a black blade. The Kazekage, Raza, spoke up in his usual even tone. Are you sure Chojuro wasn't the one responsible for those deaths? Mei met his gaze with unwavering certainty. No, it wasn't him. A Chunin who survived the attack reported everything to us. Considering he lost both legs and an arm, I'm inclined to believe his story. Anoki, the Tsuchikage, raised an eyebrow, skeptical. You're telling us a boy was capable of killing one of your legendary swordsmen but left another alive? For what purpose, Mizukage Dano? Mei's gaze grew distant for a moment, her voice soft but clear. The boy claimed he spared Chojuro to deliver a message to someone he called the light of this world, someone he believed was the only hope for the future. As enlightening as that is, Hiruzen interrupted, his tone a bit sharper now, I don't think we have time for more stories. We need to stop the boy before he does something unforgivable. But as Hiruzen finished speaking, the air was split by a sharp, pained scream, Kuratsuchi's scream. The Kages immediately turned their eyes to the arena below, each of them tensing at the sight of the young Kunoichi hurtling toward the wall. Anoki shot up from his seat, his old but powerful chakra flaring as he prepared to obliterate the offending genin. Mei rose as well, ready to defend her swordsman. Hiruzen and Raza, ever the measured tacticians, also stood, chakra poised for action. Only the Raikage, remained seated, oddly relaxed, his sharp gaze watching the situation unfold with a mix of anticipation and intrigue. Arena floor, a few seconds earlier, shit. Kuratsuchi cursed under her breath as she narrowly dodged another swing from Chojuro's oversized, chakra-infused sword. The force of the blow sent a wave of energy rippling through the air, hitting her hard and sending her crashing into the arena wall with a painful thud. A sharp cry escaped her as she hit the ground, her body aching from the impact. When she looked up from her crouched position, her vision swam slightly, but she could see Chojuro already mid-air, his sword raised high above his head, chakra crackling along its length as he prepared to bring it down with a devastating final strike. Kuratsuchi's heart raced as she realized she didn't have enough time to dodge. In that moment, her mind went blank, and her instincts kicked in. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the blow. Clank! The sound of metal meeting metal rang out through the arena, but the pain she expected never came. Kuratsuchi's eyes snapped open, and to her astonishment, she saw Naruto standing in front of her, holding off Chojuro's massive sword with his own golden blade. His body was crouched low, one hand gripping the hilt of his sword, the other bracing the flat side of the blade. The sheer force of the clash had cracked the ground beneath Naruto's feet, but he stood firm, blocking the attack. "This fight," Naruto said, his voice calm but firm, "is over." Naruto raised his head slightly, his blue eyes hardening as he channeled a small but potent amount of Haushoku no Haki, a rare ability that projected his dominating willpower. It wasn't enough to affect anyone else, but it was more than enough to knock out Chojuro, whose mind was already teetering on the edge of control. The unstable Genin's eyes rolled back as he collapsed, unconscious, into Naruto's waiting arms. "Medics!" Naruto called urgently, his voice carrying across the arena. "He needs help." As the medics rushed forward, Naruto gently lowered Chojuro into their care before turning his attention to Kuratsuchi, who was still sitting on the ground, staring at him in a mix of awe and disbelief. "Are you okay, Kuratsuchi?" Naruto asked, his voice softer now, his concern evident. The Iwa Kunoichi shook her head, clearing the fog from her mind. "Why yeah, just a couple of bruises. Nothing serious," she said, brushing off her injuries as minor. The medics moved toward Chojuro, checking his condition, while Naruto turned back to Kuratsuchi. "Take her in for a checkup too," he told the medics. Kuratsuchi scowled and waved off his concern. "Hey! I said I'm fine." Naruto smiled, a hint of teasing in his voice. "That's why I said, checkup. Better to be safe than sorry." Seeing the genuine worry in his eyes, Kuratsuchi finally relented, though not without sticking her tongue out at him in mock defiance. Naruto chuckled softly as she followed the medics, shaking his head before turning to head back to the contestant booth. Kage booth Hiruzen let out a long breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly as the tension dissipated. "Well, we just avoided an international incident," he thought to himself, his gaze softening with relief. "Mizukage Dano, I'm afraid that Chojuro is not yet ready for the responsibilities of a chunin," he said aloud, his tone regretful but firm. Anoki, still standing and bristling with anger, scowled. "You're damn right he isn't. He's unstable, Kami damn it. If that brat hadn't stepped in to save my granddaughter, this conversation would be going very differently." The Kazekage, Raza, glanced at the Raikage, who remained seated, arms crossed but with an air of satisfaction. "You seem to know the outcome, Raikage Dano," Raza remarked. A grunted in acknowledgement, his eyes still on the retreating Naruto. "I've kept an eye on the boy. One of the reports I received mentioned that he took a poisoned hit for his teammate, jumped off a cliff to save another, and even faced an A-rank missing nin to protect a girl. From what I've overheard from my own genin, he befriended your granddaughter, Tsuchikage Dano, so it makes sense he wouldn't let her die like that." Hiruzen's gaze sharpened, suspicion lacing his words. "How exactly do you have so much information on one of my genin, Raikage Dano?" The Raikage smirked, unbothered by the accusation. "Relax, Hokage Dano. It was luck. One of my jonin teams was returning from a mission nearby and stumbled upon the action. They were nearly taken out by that brat's jutsu." His tone was casual, but it carried a note of respect for Naruto's abilities. Mei, her voice deceptively sweet, chimed in. "But the way Naruto knocked out Chojuro, it's strikingly similar to how he was knocked out by that boy with the black blade. Care to explain, Hokage Dano?" Her smile was calm, but there was an unsettling edge to it. Hiruzen sighed, looking slightly resigned. "Naruto-kun, as the head of the Uzumaki clan, has many secrets, even from me." Raza's voice was measured, though there was a faint hint of concern. Is it wise to have someone like that in your ranks, someone who keeps secrets even from you? Hiruzen's expression grew serious, his voice unwavering. His loyalty is unquestionable. Raza raised an eyebrow, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Isn't that the same thing you said about Orochimaru before his defection? The reminder stung, but Hiruzen held his ground. Orochimaru sought power for himself. Naruto-kun seeks strength to protect his precious people. That's the difference that makes me believe in him more than I ever believed in any of my shinobi. Inoki let out a low chuckle, the skepticism in his voice apparent. That's a bold statement, especially when talking about a 13-year-old genin. He may be young, Hiruzen countered, but his character is already as strong as some of my best jonin. The Raikage, sensing the shift in the conversation, decided to redirect. Either way, the girl, Kuratsuchi, is definitely Chunin material. May nodded in agreement. Yes, I believe so. Raza, ever neutral, added, I concur. Inoki, his mood brightening, grinned with pride. Ha! She's my granddaughter, after all. Hiruzen smiled warmly, acknowledging the Iwa Kunoichi's skills. The girl is indeed skilled and quick-thinking, Tsuchikage Dano. You have quite a talent in her. The Kages settled back into their seats, the tension in the booth easing as they shifted their focus to the next match, but the undercurrent of respect for the young genin remained strong. In the contestant booth as Naruto returned to the booth, brushing off the dirt from the intense clash, Sasuke greeted him with his usual smirk. You know, Dobe, looking at you, someone might think you've developed a hero complex. Naruto shrugged casually. Yeah, well, someone had to step in. Sakura, however, wasn't as amused. Covered, my ass. He almost crushed you with his sword-changing thingy, baka. She landed a swift smack on Naruto's head, her expression filled with frustration. Now that the old marriage routine is covered. Sasuke teased, his eyes gleaming mischievously. Both Naruto and Sakura immediately turned bright red, stammering incoherently. We're not married. Sakura shot back, though the heat in her cheek said otherwise. Sasuke just smirked wider before continuing. So, Dobe, how exactly did you knock Chojuro out? Naruto gave him a smug look. I could tell you, but I won't, he replied, enjoying the look of irritation that passed across Sasuke's face. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. Dobe. Naruto met his glare. Team. Before their bickering could escalate any further, Sakura stepped between them, still a bit flustered. Can you two save this for your fight? We're all going to be sick of hearing Dobe and team before the end of the day. Then she glanced around. By the way, where's the girl from Iwa? Kuratsuchi? Medics are giving her a checkup, Naruto said with a shrug. Better safe than sorry. On the arena floor as the next match was announced, Genma's voice rang through the stadium. Will Gaara no Sabaku and Akatsuchi come down to the arena? But before anything could happen, a loud voice from the stands immediately cut through the tension. I forfeit. Akatsuchi yelled, raising his hand in defeat before even stepping onto the battlefield. The audience gasped, many of them shouting in shock and disappointment at the unexpected surrender. Genma blinked, clearly surprised but unfazed by the sudden development. Very well, then winner by forfeit, Gaara no Sabaku, he declared, his voice ringing through the stadium as a wave of boos and jeers erupted from the audience, clearly unhappy with the lack of a fight. Ignoring the noise, Genma continued, now we will have a recess before we start the semi-finals. Kage Booth Raikage leaned back in his seat, his arms crossed, shaking his head slightly. Well, that was anticlimactic. It may be anticlimactic, but it was a smart decision, Raza said calmly, his tone betraying no emotion. Akatsuchi would have been crushed. My son's power is overwhelming. It was a tactical forfeit. Anoki, the Tsuchikage, frowned deeply. Be that as it may, I think it would be unfair for my granddaughter to fight so soon after her last match, he said, his voice gruff but protective. She needs more time to recover. Mei Terumi, the Mizukage, gave Anoki a pointed look. Life is not fair, Tsuchikage Dano, she said coolly. But Raza, ever the strategist, spoke up again. I think it would be wise to push my son's fight forward. It would create more of a spectacle, after all. Reikage scoffed. That would be ridiculous. There's a schedule in place, and we should stick to it. His deep voice was resolute, clearly uninterested in altering the flow of the exams for any one genin. Hiruzen stroked his chin thoughtfully. If Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun, and Garaboy fight first, then the girls will have less time to rest before the final match of the tournament. It wouldn't be fair to any of the fighters. Anoki puffed up, his voice filled with pride. Ha! My granddaughter has her match in the bag, he boasted arrogantly. Mei gave him a sharp look. Where were you when those girls decimated their opponents? She asked, her tone mocking. Hiruzen, not missing the opportunity, chuckled lightly. I hope you won't cry about how unfair it was later, Tsuchikage Dano. Anoki grumbled under his breath but remained silent. Mei continued, her tone more serious now. I don't think it's a good idea, Hokage Dano. If you alter the schedule to favor the girl, it will show blatant favoritism toward Kuratsuchi because of her connections to Hokage. Raza agreed, nodding slightly. It does raise a question of fairness. She's not the only child of Hokage in this tournament. Hiruzen considered their points carefully before responding. You're right. We should be fair to all participants, regardless of their connections. The decision has already been made, and we will proceed accordingly. He signaled for one of his ANBU to deliver the message to the officials, indicating that no changes to the schedule would be made. Mei, still skeptical, sighed. Very well, Hokage Dano. But I hope this decision doesn't cause further complications. The tension in the Kage booth eased slightly as the conversation shifted, though there was still an underlying sense of anticipation for the upcoming semi-final matches. All eyes were now on the young genin, Naruto, Sasuke, Gaara, Kuratsuchi, and the others, each representing the next generation of their respective villages. The competition was about to intensify, and every Kage knew that the true challenges were only just beginning. Contestant booth. As the ANBU finished delivering the message from the Hokage, Sakura's frustration was evident. That is Hokage-sama's decision, the ANBU said, his voice even and emotionless. Sakura blinked, a bit taken aback. What? Why? Our match was supposed to be next, she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. The ANBU simply shrugged. Don't know, don't care. Without another word, he turned and disappeared in a blur of motion using Shunshin and Ojutsu. Sakura muttered to herself, so not fair. Kuratsuchi, who had just returned after her checkup with the medics, overheard her. Life is not fair, she said with a smirk, echoing her grandfather's earlier sentiments from the Kage booth. Meanwhile, Naruto was practically vibrating with excitement. He slammed his fist into his open palm, grinning wildly. I'm so fired up now, he declared, the energy radiating from him infectious. Sasuke, ever the cool rival, smirked back. Yeah, fired up to lose, he said, his tone dripping with mock confidence. Ha! You wish. Naruto shot back, jabbing a finger towards Sasuke's face. His expression was full of determination, clearly ready to back up his words. Sakura sighed, cutting into their banter. You two do realize that the semi-finals are triple threat matches, right? She said, her tone sharp but slightly exasperated. You should be more focused on the match than this mindless bickering. Naruto, as usual, waved off her concerns. Don't worry, Sakura-chan. We'll be fine, Dadabayo. His confidence only made Sakura more nervous. She muttered under her breath, "When you say that, I worry even more." Naruto, ever the dreamer, grinned brightly. "You should be concentrating on your match and the finals. Because, whoever wins between you and Kuratsuchi, you'll be facing me, Dadabayo." He thumped his thumb against his chest, clearly already seeing himself as the victor. "Dream on, Dobe," Sasuke shot back, his voice full of challenge. Sakura could only groan, feeling the tension between them already reaching its usual levels. "It's going to be a long 5 minutes," she muttered to herself, feeling like she was trapped between two children more than elite shinobi. Arena floor. 5 minutes later the crowd's excitement surged as Genma, the proctor, stood in the center of the arena, raising his voice above the noise of the audience. The first semi-final match, Gaara no Sabaku vs Sasuke Uchiha vs Naruto Uzumaki. The roar of the crowd grew even louder, with Naruto's name being met with the most cheers, likely due to the unforgettable matches he'd had earlier that day. Genma waited for the audience to settle before continuing, "Are you all ready? Then. Hajime." The second the match started, Sasuke's Sharingan activated, his eyes immediately tracking both Naruto and Gaara. Wasting no time, Sasuke hurled kunai at each of them, each equipped with a small flash bomb attached to the handle. Naruto, catching onto Sasuke's plan with his quick reflexes, wasn't about to be caught off guard. He grinned, quickly forming a golden energy shield, taijutsu, and hurled it like a spinning disc. The golden disc flew through the air, slicing the kunai Sasuke had thrown at him clean in half, flash bomb and all. Sasuke had to dive to the side to avoid being hit by the spinning shield. Gaara, however, wasn't as prepared. His sand caught the kunai Sasuke had thrown, but the flash bomb still went off, temporarily blinding him. The Suna Genin growled in frustration as he attempted to recover, sand swirling protectively around him. Sasuke wasn't able to take advantage of Gaara's temporary vulnerability, as Naruto was already charging at him, ready to engage in close combat. The two clashed in an intense exchange of taijutsu, each blow calculated and fierce. Even with his Sharingan activated, it quickly became apparent that Sasuke was slower and physically weaker than Naruto, who had honed his speed and strength in countless battles. After just half a minute of fierce hand-to-hand combat, Sasuke overextended himself, throwing a wide left hook that Naruto easily ducked under. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto launched a powerful kick that connected with Sasuke's chin, sending the Uchiha flying through the air. But Sasuke wasn't done yet. Midair, he quickly flipped backward, his sharp reflexes on full display. As he landed, he unsealed a massive windmill shuriken from the storage seal on his wrist and hurled it at Naruto with precision. Naruto, his grin never fading, responded with the same golden disc he had used earlier. The taijutsu returned, flying back towards him just in time to intercept the windmill shuriken. The disc sliced through 3 of the shuriken's 4 blades, rendering the weapon ineffective. Naruto caught one of the remaining blades, turning the broken shuriken into a makeshift machete. Without hesitation, he charged at Sasuke once more, the gleam of determination in his eyes. Sasuke, unfazed, drew a kunai in response, his Sharingan spinning as he prepared for the inevitable clash. The two locked eyes for a moment, the air between them charged with anticipation. Both knew this battle would be unlike any they'd fought before. Meanwhile, Gaara, who had finally regained his composure after being momentarily blinded, stood a short distance away. His sand began swirling with increasing intensity, a fierce expression on his face as he observed the battle between his two competitors. Though he had yet to make a move, Gaara's presence loomed large over the battlefield. His bloodlust was unmistakable, and it was only a matter of time before he made his play. The arena crackled with energy as Naruto and Sasuke prepared to clash once more, and the audience watched with bated breath, knowing that the true intensity of the battle had only just begun. The audience, "Wow, that's intense!" Enko exclaimed, her eyes locked on the ongoing fight below. And it's only the beginning. Kurenai nodded, equally entranced by the battle. Well, you can't really say the previous fights weren't intense, she replied. Enko smirked. True, but the Gaki is swinging that makeshift blade like he's trying to cut down the princess, she said, referring to the ferocity of Naruto's attacks against Sasuke. You're forgetting, Asuma chimed in with a smirk of his own, this is a triple threat match. It's not just about Naruto versus Sasuke. Gaara's still lurking, and that kid is a wild card. Arena floor Sasuke gritted his teeth as his Sharingan spun wildly, trying to keep up with Naruto's relentless assault. Despite his best efforts, Naruto's speed and strength were overwhelming him. When their blades clashed, Sasuke could feel the raw power behind Naruto's attacks. With a grimace, he attempted to push Naruto back, but the blonde smirked and slammed his elbow into the back of his makeshift weapon. Sasuke barely had time to react before Naruto's strike shattered his kunai and cut him down, only for Sasuke's body to turn into two halves of a wooden log. Substitution, and paper bombs? Naruto thought, his eyes widening in realization. A series of loud hisses came from the log, which was rigged with paper bombs. Naruto had no time to hesitate, he discarded his weapon and used Shunshin no Jutsu to teleport to the far side of the arena, avoiding the explosion just in time. However, his senses flared once more, thanks to his Kenbun-shoku no Haki. Without thinking, Naruto jumped onto the arena wall, narrowly avoiding 3 sand bullets that streaked through the space he'd been standing just moments earlier. He cursed under his breath. Gaara was starting to get serious. Sasuke wasn't as lucky. Though his Sharingan alerted him in time to avoid 2 of the sand bullets, the third one hit him in the shoulder, leaving a deep bruise but luckily no broken bones. Grunting through the pain, Sasuke gritted his teeth and formed hand seals. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke unleashed a massive fireball at Gaara, the flames roaring toward the Suna Genin. Gaara, however, remained calm. His sand rose instinctively, blocking the fireball completely. But while Gaara was preoccupied with canceling out Sasuke's attack, he didn't notice Naruto, who had used the opportunity to close the distance. Naruto's Busoshoku no Haki enhanced fist, completely blackened from the technique, was already mid-swing when Gaara turned. Before he could react, Naruto's chakra-infused punch landed squarely on Gaara's jaw, sending him flying through the arena wall. A kunai landed at Naruto's feet almost instantly, but before he could react, it exploded in a blinding flash of light. Sasuke had thrown it, hoping to capitalize on the moment. As Naruto staggered back, momentarily blinded, Sasuke rushed in, kneeing Naruto hard in the stomach. Naruto doubled over in pain, but quickly recovered, relying on his Kenbun-shoku no Haki to avoid Sasuke's follow-up punches even while his vision was impaired. He ducked, weaved, and sidestepped effortlessly, making Sasuke increasingly frustrated. Every strike missed its mark, and the more Sasuke pressed forward, the more erratic his movements became. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of missed strikes, both boys were frozen by a sudden surge of killing intent. Gaara had returned, but not as he was before. His body had partially transformed into Shikaku's, a grotesque, sand-covered version of his upper body, complete with wild eyes and a menacing grin. Finally, Naruto thought to himself, now fully recovered. He grinned widely as both of his hands turned jet black, encased in Busoshoku no Haki. With chakra flooding his legs, he shot toward Gaara, his body a blur of motion. As Naruto neared, Gaara's sand lashed out in a massive arm, attempting to crush the blonde mid-charge. But Naruto's Haki allowed him to predict the attack's path, and he effortlessly dodged the arm, sliding under it. He ducked beneath Gaara's follow-up sweep, then delivered a devastating uppercut to Gaara's chin, sending him reeling back. The impact shook Gaara's sand armor, loosening it from his body. Naruto didn't stop. He followed up with a powerful kick to Gaara's ribs, the sickening crack indicating 2 ribs had shattered. The blonde then grabbed Gaara's arm and kneed him in the side of the head, drawing blood from the redhead's mouth. I need to end this quickly, Naruto thought as he saw Gaara's rage building. Before Shikaku takes over. Positioning his hands parallel to each other, Naruto prepared to unleash one of his more powerful techniques. His voice rang out, loud and clear. Rokugan. The impact of Naruto's attack sent shockwaves through the arena as the full force of the technique tore through Gaara's sand defenses. The sand around Gaara's body was blown away, and his clothes ripped from the front and back as if a hurricane had passed through. Gaara fell to his knees, barely conscious, his mind clouded by pain. Naruto wasn't done. Reaching into his pouch, he pulled out a black sealing note adorned with the royal Uzumaki clan crest. In one swift motion, he slapped it onto Gaara's chest and shouted, "Fuin." Golden light flashed across the arena as the kanji from the note spread across Gaara's body. The sand that had always protected him fell lifeless to the ground. The Suna Genin's eyes widened in shock, more terrified than ever. What have you done?" Gaara rasped, his voice weak. I can't hear mother." Naruto smiled gently, his voice soft. "Not only that, but you don't have to be afraid of sleep anymore. Nighty-night." With that, Naruto delivered a swift chop to the back of Gaara's neck, knocking him out cold. The audience erupted into cheers as the medics rushed to remove Gaara from the arena. Naruto, looking up, saw Ganma confirming Gaara's elimination from the match. 1 down, 1 to go, Naruto said to himself, only to hear the unmistakable sound of chirping birds. Turning around, he saw Sasuke, standing high on the arena wall, his hand encased in crackling blue lightning, Chidori. The audience from the stands, Guy's eyes narrowed. "And you were trying to admonish me for teaching my student a dangerous technique? That, Chidori, is an assassination technique, meant to kill." Kiba, overhearing the conversation, looked horrified. "Wait. Kill?" Anko, leaning back in her seat, explained, "That's a lighter version of Raikiri, also called the Chidori, an A-rank assassination jutsu. It's the pinnacle of lightning nature manipulation, made by Kakashi himself." She shrugged casually. "But if you ask me, it's just a rip-off of Yondame's Rasengan." Kakashi, who had been listening, gave her a side eye. "It was inspired by my sensei's jutsu, yes. But Rasengan is shape manipulation, and Chidori is nature manipulation. They're fundamentally different." Kiba's anxiety spiked as he watched Sasuke charging his attack. "That doesn't change the fact that he's going to use it on Naruto." Karen, sitting nearby, smiled confidently. "Don't worry. Sasuke-kun isn't the only one with an A-rank jutsu up his sleeve." Arena floor Naruto's breath came in heavy gasps, his eyes flickering with confusion and pain. As he stood there, a victorious smile had barely graced his lips after defeating Sasuke when suddenly, Kuratsuchi, one of the people he had considered his friend, appeared before him. The initial joy of seeing her quickly turned into confusion. "Kuratsuchi?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He ignored the warning bells ringing loudly in his mind, the ones born of his Kenban Shoku no Haki. Surely, she wasn't a threat. She was one of his precious people. One of his friends. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice tight with emotion, but there was no turning back now. In the next moment, a sharp pain lanced through Naruto's abdomen as Kuratsuchi drove a kunai deep into his stomach. Time seemed to slow, the shock rendering him momentarily speechless. "Keikuro, Tsuchi." Naruto stammered, disbelief etched across his face. His knees buckled, his hand instinctively pressing against the wound in a futile attempt to stem the blood. His blue eyes met hers, searching, pleading for an explanation. She closed her eyes tightly, her expression contorted with guilt, but before she could say anything more, she gripped another kunai, this time poised to strike Naruto in the neck, a finishing blow. But before her kunai could land, a deadly accurate kunai flew past, aimed directly at her head. She barely managed to leap away at the last second, narrowly avoiding being killed herself. Genma, the proctor, was already on high alert and had thrown the kunai, now fully aware that something was deeply wrong. Why? Naruto croaked from where he knelt, blood oozing between his fingers as he held his stomach, pain evident in his voice. Why would you? Kuratsuchi opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, her teammate Kagitsuchi sneered, cutting her off. Ha! Don't tell me you actually thought she was your friend, you fool. Kagitsuchi mocked. His voice dripped with malice as he and his other teammate, along with a group of 6 IWA Jonin, surrounded the injured Naruto. Naruto, still on his knees, barely registered the gravity of the situation. His body was weakened by the kunai wound, but it was his heart that seemed shattered beyond repair. How could this be happening? Normally, Kagitsuchi continued, his eyes alight with twisted glee, I'd kill you myself. But since you're a Jinchuriki, we'll use the weapon inside you to bring IWA to the top where it belongs. His smirk widened, feeding off Naruto's visible pain. Of course, extracting the beast will kill you, so it's a win-win situation for us. As Kagitsuchi spoke, the 6 IWA Jonin closed in around Naruto, their chakra flaring as they prepared to subdue him. Gaara had been taken away, Sasuke was unconscious, and Naruto, bleeding and betrayed, was at their mercy. The air around Naruto grew tense, a thick silence blanketing the arena. The once thrilling cheers of the crowd had died down completely, replaced by a shocked stillness. No one had expected this. The Kage booth had erupted into chaos as soon as Kuratsuchi had stabbed Naruto. The Tsuchikage, Inoki, rose from his seat, a dark fury twisting his aged features. What is the meaning of this? Inoki roared, his voice shaking with authority and rage. His gaze was fixed on the arena below, where his granddaughter was involved in the ambush. His heart sank at the sight. It had to be some kind of mistake, didn't it? Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Hokage, was equally furious, his weathered face set in a deep frown as he tried to process what was happening. This is an act of war, Tsuchikage Dano, he said gravely, his eyes burning with accusation. Inoki gritted his teeth, his mind racing. I never authorized this. They're acting on their own. He snapped at his ANBU, already preparing to send them in, but his mind swirled with the implications. He had known Kuratsuchi was sent to observe Naruto, but to betray him like this? Was this really what IWA had planned? The Raikage stood up from his seat, muscles tensed, ready to leap into action. If this isn't stopped, we'll have more than a Chunin exam on our hands, he growled. The tension in the air was thick. If this escalated further, war between villages wasn't out of the question. Arena floor Naruto's mind was racing. His heart hurt more than the wound in his stomach. Kuratsuchi, one of the few people he thought he could trust, had stabbed him in the back, literally. His vision blurred as he tried to make sense of the betrayal, the wound bleeding heavily onto the dirt beneath him. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. The 6 IWA Jonin circled around him, their chakra signatures crackling with malicious intent. They were clearly preparing to extract the 9 tails from him right here, right now. I can't let that happen. Kuratsuchi stood frozen, torn between duty and guilt. Her hands trembled slightly, but the mission was clear. Naruto's vision swam, but he knew what he had to do. His body still thrummed with chakra, and despite the pain, despite the betrayal, his will to protect his village, his friends, surged forward. He grit his teeth, lifting his head just as the IWA Jonin stepped closer. Not yet, he muttered. In an instant, the air around Naruto changed. His chakra flared up, bright and powerful, creating a pulsating wave that pushed the IWA Shinobi back a few steps. His anger, his hurt, and his determination all bubbled up at once, and his eyes gleamed with something new, a resolve that cut deeper than any wound. You think you can take me down that easily? Naruto growled, his voice filled with anger, but also sadness. He wouldn't let them win. Not like this. The ground beneath him trembled slightly as his chakra exploded outward. His Kurama chakra seeped into the air, forming a faint red aura around him. Though injured, Naruto's strength was far from depleted. Before the IWA Jonin could make their next move, a powerful gust of wind whipped through the arena, and several ANBU from the Hokage's personal guard appeared, blades at the ready. Stand down, one of the ANBU barked, his mask adorned with the symbol of the leaf. The IWA Jonin hesitated, their hands twitching toward their weapons, but the sudden arrival of reinforcements gave them pause. The situation was teetering on the edge of disaster. Genma, still keeping Baki at bay, yelled across the arena, "Konoha will not stand for this treachery. Surrender now, or face the consequences." Naruto, still kneeling but clearly not defeated, clenched his fists. His sharp blue eyes locked onto Kuratsuchi's, and for a split second, there was nothing but confusion and hurt behind them. But then, his face hardened. He wouldn't let them break him. Not now. Not ever. Kage Booth, this needs to end now, Hokage Dano. Mei Terumi, the Mizukage, spoke sharply, her voice cutting through the tension. If this continues, we're going to have a full-blown war on our hands. Hiruzen nodded grimly, signaling his ANBU to move in more aggressively. I know, but Naruto, he's not one to go down quietly. The Raikage, ever the man of action, growled low in his throat. If you can't handle this, Hokage, I'll take matters into my own hands. He cracked his knuckles, ready to leap into the fray if necessary. Anoki was already barking orders to his own men, his face twisted in a mix of shame and fury. This was never the plan. Kuratsuchi. Stand down now. He looked to his granddaughter, praying that she would listen. The battle on the arena floor was just seconds from exploding into something far greater. The rooftop of the Kage booth. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, stood rigidly across from the two Kages, Anoki, the Tsuchikage, and the Kazekage. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the promise of violence. The Raikage and Mizukage stood off to the side, watching intently, their loyalties not yet clear. Hiruzen's sharp eyes flickered to the barrier that had just been erected around them. This was no ordinary confrontation. The old Hokage's voice was calm but firm as he asked, "What is the meaning of this, Kazekage Dano, Tsuchikage Dano? Why are you doing this?" Anoki sneered, his short stature doing nothing to diminish the malice in his voice. "That's a rather foolish question, Hiruzen." "Why?" "To destroy your village, of course." Before Hiruzen could respond, the cloaked figure standing behind the Kazekage stepped forward. A chill ran through the air as the man pulled back his hood, revealing his face. "Danzo." Hiruzen growled, his eyes narrowing in rage and disbelief. "I thought everything you did was for the betterment of Konoha. Why are you trying to destroy your own home?" Danzo Shimura, the old war hawk, gazed coldly at his former comrade. "This village is infested by the cancer of your beliefs, Hiruzen. Your ideals, and those of the Yondaime, have rotted Konoha to its core. The will of fire has become weak. I must cut off and burn the infested roots to reshape Konoha into what it was always meant to be." Hiruzen's heart sank as he realized the extent of Danzo's madness. "You're a madman," he spat. Danzo gave a cold, condescending smile. "I prefer the term visionary." He turned his gaze toward the Raikage and Mizukage, who stood watching. "Raikage Dano, Mizukage Dano, join us. With your strength, we can destroy this weak Konoha and reshape the shinobi world. Raikage, your village will finally have the Byakugan." Mizukage, this village that failed to aid you during your rebellion can be punished for all the wrongs they've done to your people. Mizukage Mai Terumi stepped forward, her heels clicking ominously on the rooftop. She approached Hiruzen, a sly smile on her face. Actually, Hokage Dano, she began, if it weren't for the blonde Uzumaki boy and his generous donations to our cause, we wouldn't have recovered so swiftly from the chaos of the blood mist. I was planning to propose an alliance between Kiri and Konoha today. Her smile vanished as she turned her gaze to Danzo, her voice sharp and cold. But now, thanks to you, I can cement our partnership another way. Mai moved to stand beside Hiruzen, her eyes filled with resolve. Zabuza. Ao. Go and make yourselves useful. Help repel the invasion. We're going to help protect Konoha. Zabuza Momochi appeared, his massive kubikuribocho resting casually on his shoulder as he nodded to Mai. Understood. Ao followed suit, both of them vanishing in an instant to join the fray below. Reikija, the ever-blunt leader of Kyumo, cracked his knuckles as he stepped beside Hiruzen, positioning himself opposite Inoki. Darui, C.B., go assist in repelling the invasion. He addressed the Tsuchikage with a sneer. I am not my father. I don't hold grudges for the last war like you do, old man. If anything, I respected Minato for his speed, strength, and skill with Fuinjutsu. I'd rather die than fight alongside your so-called ally. He threw a disgusted look at Danzo. Danzo, undeterred, peeled off his bandages to reveal his arm covered in Sharingan eyes. I'm disappointed, Reikage, he said coldly, but no matter. With Kazekage under my control, I will see this through. He swiftly went through a series of hand seals. Kuchios, Edo Tensei. The ground beneath them trembled as two coffins rose up from the rooftop, their lids creaking open. From within the coffins, two familiar figures stepped out, their eyes glowing with the unnatural light of the reanimation jutsu. Danzo. What have you done? Hiruzen whispered, his heart heavy with dread. The audience, what the hell is going on, screamed a panicked Ino, her voice trembling as she watched the chaos erupt around her. Karui, already in the thick of battle, cut down an Oto Chunin with a swift strike. Are you that dumb? She snapped, not even looking back at Ino. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Your village is being invaded by Oto, Suna, and Iwa. What about Kyumo? Ino asked, barely able to keep her thoughts straight in the madness. Karui dodged another attack, slashing through a Suna shinobi with ease. Are you blind? We're fighting them too, she shouted, annoyed. You should worry more about Kiri, Karui, look out. Choji bellowed as he threw himself in front of the redhead, just in time to block a Suna shinobi's attack. For a moment, he froze, certain he was about to be cut down. But instead, the shinobi fell to the ground in two clean halves, cut down by a massive blade. Zabuza Momochi loomed over them, his kubikuribocho dripping with fresh blood. Looks like Kiri is on our side, Choji muttered in disbelief. Asuma Sarutobi appeared nearby, dispatching an Iwa Jonin with a well-placed strike. Listen up, kids, he called out, his voice commanding. You need to evacuate the civilians and VIPs to safety. Kakashi landed beside Zabuza, eyeing the battlefield. Shikamaru, take a team and check on the genin who were admitted to the infirmary inside the arena. We can't let any of our own get caught in this mess. Shikamaru sighed, already knowing the burden was falling on his shoulders. Troublesome. He muttered before nodding. Choji, Karui, Ann. I'm coming, said Karen, stepping forward. I'm a censor. I can help. Shikamaru gave her a quick nod of approval. Fine. Choji, Karui, and Karen, you're with me. The rest of you, escort the civilians and VIPs. With a chorus of "Hi," the group dispersed, racing to their designated tasks. Zabuza, watching them retreat, growled impatiently. "What the hell are you standing around for? Move!" The battle raged on around them, the air thick with the sound of clashing steel, explosions, and the cries of shinobi engaged in combat. As chaos unfolded in every corner of Konoha, the Chunin exams had become a battlefield unlike any other. The air in the arena was thick with tension as Kajitsuchi's vile words echoed across the battlefield. His lecherous grin widened as he boasted about what he would do to the girls he had seen, Naruto's friends. It was disgusting, depraved, and Naruto could feel his blood boil as each word slithered from the man's lips. Enough! Naruto's voice exploded like thunder, reverberating across the stadium. A burst of Haushoku no Haki surged from him in a wave of raw, untamed power, immediately knocking out every enemy shinobi in the stands. The once chaotic arena suddenly fell eerily silent, as the invading forces collapsed under the sheer weight of Naruto's will. Akatsuchi, one of the enemy shinobi, could only stutter in disbelief, what the... Naruto, his face obscured by the mask that had become his signature, finally spoke. His voice was cold, filled with a deadly calm as he addressed the fallen shinobi. "I have to thank you, trash." He tilted his head slightly, as if in mock contemplation. "Until now, I had some reservations." His hand, cloaked in ominous black flames, hovered over the wound on his stomach. With a swift, decisive motion, he pulled a radiant golden flame from within, a light so intense it seemed otherworldly. The fire hovered in the air beside him, shimmering with ancient power. "But now, I don't have them anymore." Naruto's mind raced, filled with the voice of the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox sealed within him. "Are you sure this will work, Kurama?" he asked mentally. "I told you, my memories of the old ways are hazy since I was split in half," Kurama growled, "but I'm pretty sure it will work." Naruto sighed inwardly, trusting the ancient beast that had been his unwanted companion for so long. With his still flaming hand, he reached into the golden fire, unleashing a torrent of energy so blinding that everyone watching had to shield their eyes. The force of it was overwhelming, crackling through the air and sending shockwaves across the arena. For a moment, it felt like time itself stretched, the intensity making every second feel like an eternity. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. When the spectators' vision cleared, gasps filled the arena. Standing beside Naruto was a figure long thought lost to time, a man with golden hair and a commanding presence, clad in the attire of the Yondaime Hokage. Minato Namikaze, the legendary fourth Hokage, was alive. "How, am I alive?" Minato asked, his confusion palpable. Naruto, still pressing his hand to his stomach wound, glanced at his father. "Well, you're not exactly alive," he replied, his voice strained. "According to Kyuubi, your soul is only bound here temporarily. You've got maybe a day." "Sorry." It took Minato a moment to fully register his surroundings. When his gaze finally landed on the young man beside him, recognition dawned in his eyes. "And Naruto?" he asked softly, disbelief coloring his voice. Naruto, equally stunned, stammered, You know my name?" Minato's expression softened, a proud, if bittersweet, smile forming. "Of course I do. Your mother and I named you. I see you've inherited her, motor mouth." He chuckled softly, trying to lighten the mood. The weight of the realization hit Naruto hard. "Sochi. I'm your, Tosan." His voice wavered with shock, disbelief, and a flood of emotions he hadn't yet begun to process. Minato's smile widened, though it was tinged with sadness. "Yes. Tosan." Then, with a more serious tone, he asked, "Wait. Jiraiya didn't tell you?" Naruto's face darkened at the mention of his perverted mentor. "Jiraiya was supposed to take care of me? That old pervert." But before Naruto could launch into a full rant, the sounds of explosions shook the village, pulling them back into the urgency of the moment. Minato's expression shifted, his battle-hardened instincts kicking in. "What's the situation?" "We're under attack, Suna, Iwa, and Oto," Naruto replied, his eyes narrowing as he looked toward the enemies still lingering in the arena. "It's a full-scale invasion." Minato's time was short, and though father and son had much to discuss, there were more pressing matters at hand. "I'll help Hiruzen-sensei," he said, his tone resolute. Before he could leave, however, Sakura, who had just arrived on the scene, rushed to Naruto's side. "You're hurt, Baka," she cried, immediately channeling her chakra to heal his wound. The sight of her fussing over Naruto made Minato chuckle softly. "So, are you my Sochi's girlfriend?" Minato asked, teasingly. Sakura's face turned crimson. "And no. Of course not." Naruto, ever the joker, smirked. "Not yet," he said with a wink, earning himself a punch to the head from Sakura, who blushed even deeper. Minato chuckled again. "You remind me of your mother, Sakura. Fiery and strong-willed." Then, turning serious once more, he looked back at Naruto. "I'll leave things here to you. You've grown strong, Sochi. I'm proud of you." With a nod, Naruto summoned an army of shadow clones, each one assigned to a different task, from defending the gates to protecting the hospital. His voice was filled with authority as he gave his orders. "Go. Protect Konoha and its people. Destroy the enemy." As the clones dispersed, Minato placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "No matter what happens today, know that I'll always be proud of you. And I'll always love you, Sochi." With that, Minato vanished, his signature teleportation technique leaving nothing but a faint shimmer in the air. Naruto barely had a moment to process the emotions swirling within him before Kajutsuchi, the foul-mouthed shinobi from earlier, spoke again. "So, you're really this monster's spawn," he sneered. "I may not be able to take on the yellow flash, but you." "I can," but before Kajutsuchi could finish, Naruto's chakra surged again, this time flaring with righteous fury. "I don't know why you betrayed me, Kuratsuchi," Naruto growled, his voice echoing with power as his hands turned black, infused with haki. "But I won't let you hurt my precious people." In an instant, Naruto disappeared, moving faster than anyone could react. Akatsuchi barely had time to begin forming a stone golem before Naruto's fist shattered it and sent the enemy flying into the wall, unconscious. Kajutsuchi didn't fare much better, a single elbow strike from Naruto caved in his chest, knocking him out cold. Kuratsuchi, the only one left standing, widened her eyes in shock before a palm strike from Naruto sent her flying back, joining her comrades in unconscious defeat. Just then, a tall man with war paint and lava-covered fists appeared, his imposing figure radiating heat. He smirked darkly. "Good," he said, eyeing Naruto. "You are Kurwa no Senku's son, after all." Inside the shimmering barrier atop Konoha's rooftops, the confrontation between the past and present played out with an eerie air of unease. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, stood face to face with the reanimated forms of the village's founders, Hashirama and Tobirama Senju, the first and second Hokage. Their return, twisted by the vile Edo Tensei, was orchestrated by none other than Danzo, the once loyal shinobi now consumed by his ambition. Hashirama, ever the light-hearted spirit even in such dark circumstances, greeted Hiruzen with a smile, though his eyes carried sadness. "Ah, Saru. You got old. How many years has it been?" His voice held the warmth of an old friend, a stark contrast to the grim situation. Hiruzen, maintaining his composure despite the weight of nostalgia, replied, "Around 60 years since your passing, Hashirama-sama." Next to him, the more stern Tobirama turned his sharp gaze toward the one who had summoned him. "Edo Tensei," he murmured, his voice laced with disdain. His eyes settled on Danzo. using my own jutsu to bring me back. The recognition dawned. Danzo? You've changed. Hashirama raised an eyebrow at his brother's remark. You know him? Yes, he was my student once, Tobarama answered, his voice carrying a trace of regret. I even considered him for the title of Sandaime Hokage. Hashirama blinked in surprise, glancing at Danzo. Why does he have my face on his shoulder? He asked, pointing at the grotesque sight of his own cells fused into Danzo's body. Tobarama, ever blunt, deadpanned, I knew I saw that ugly mug somewhere. So mean. Hashirama whimpered, crouching and drawing circles on the rooftop with his finger in mock sadness. His playful demeanor, though amusing, was quickly ignored by the more serious Tobarama. But the atmosphere grew darker as Tobarama turned back to Danzo. What is the meaning of all this? He demanded, his tone ice-cold. Danzo, unfazed by the presence of his former sensei, finally spoke, his voice as sharp as the kunai he held. I'm going to redefine the village, he said, eyes gleaming with his twisted sense of justice. Turn it from a peace-loving bunch of fools into what it was supposed to be from the start, Hashirama interjected with a sigh. Some student you had there, Tobarama. Tobarama grunted. How was I supposed to know he'd lose his mind? Hashirama's expression turned serious as he regarded Danzo. I created this village with Madara to bring peace, not more wars, child. Danzo's patience thinned. I don't have time for this. Without hesitation, he plunged kunai into the backs of the two reanimated Hokage's heads. Hashirama and Tobarama's eyes dulled momentarily as their minds succumbed to Danzo's control. This way, they may not have their full power, but I'll have complete control. Across from the rooftop, the Raikage narrowed his eyes at the spectacle unfolding before him. And that's why I would never side with a monster like you, Tsuchikage, he growled toward Inoki, the third Tsuchikage. Inoki, floating alongside Danzo, simply smirked. That's for me to worry about. Danzo raised his hand, signaling the battle to begin. Shodaime, Nidaime, kill my enemies. At his command, the two Hokages launched into action, weaving hand seals with terrifying precision. Suetun, Suryuban no Jutsu. Tobarama intoned, as a ball of water materialized before him, tendrils of sharp, whip-like water lashing out. At the same time, Hashirama's jutsu erupted. Mokuton Hijitsu, Jukai Koten. From the very rooftop, trees sprang to life, thick and entangling, reaching toward the three Kages. Meitarumi, and Hiruzen reacted instantly, leaping back to evade the deadly jutsu. But the water whips twisted through the air, pursuing them with relentless precision. They barely had time to brace themselves when the Mokuton attack surged forward from behind, branches spiraling toward them like a living forest. Just as the deadly attacks were about to ensnare the Kages, two figures appeared out of nowhere, screaming, Rasengan. They slammed their orbs of chakra into the two reanimated Hokages, disrupting their concentration and halting the jutsu. The two figures then dissipated into clouds of smoke, shadow clones. Landing in front of the startled Kages was none other than Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. I hope you didn't wait too long, he said, a wry smile on his face. Minato? The Raikage's disbelief was palpable. But how? Hiruzen's eyes widened with astonishment. How is this possible? Minato shrugged, looking exasperated. Beats me. You'd have to ask my son, who didn't even know I was his father until I told him. There was a bitterness in his tone. I don't know what happened to Jiraiya-sensei that he abandoned his own godson, but I hope he found a way to live forever, because the last thing he'd want is to face Kushina-chan. The thought of his fiery wife sent a shiver down his spine. Danzo's expression remained unreadable. That's unexpected. He admitted. But not unwanted, Inoki added with a dark smirk. Minato's blue eyes gleamed with determination. I aim to be problematic for people like you. Anoki's smirk twisted. It doesn't matter how you've returned. You'll die again. Minato leaned toward the other Kages, his voice a quiet murmur. I was brought back only for this battle, so let's make it count. We'll have to split them up. He gestured toward the enemies. I'll handle the Shodame and Niidame. Hiruzen, you take on Danzo. You deal with Anoki. May Terumi, Godame Mizukage, May introduced herself, her tone polite but steely. May-san, you'll take on Raza. Be careful, his golden sand is faster than it looks. Hiruzen added, if possible, try to capture him. He's just a puppet under Danzo's Sharingan technique. May smiled. I can't promise anything, she said with a wink, her sharp gaze focused on the battle ahead. Ready? Minato asked, his voice carrying that familiar sense of command. Let's go. Meanwhile, back in the arena, Naruto slammed into the wall, the force of the impact sending cracks through the stone. His body ached, his breathing labored. Before him stood Rashi, the Yoton no Rashi, host of the Four Tails, Son Goku. A veteran of war, Rashi's experience showed. In every powerful blow. Is that all you've got? Rashi taunted, his voice dripping with disappointment. You're quite underwhelming. Naruto, still on his knees, spat a bit of blood. I'm 13, he growled, forcing himself to his feet. You're a war veteran, Yoton no Rashi. The older shinobi chuckled darkly. So, you know who I am, Kyubi Jinchuriki. Impressive. Naruto met his gaze, determination burning in his eyes. And you know who I am, too. Rashi examined him with mild amusement. Whatever technique you're using to protect yourself from my lava release is tiring you out quickly, boy. Not quite. Naruto grinned, his energy surging anew. I just used a lot of chakra to set up this, Uzumaki Hijitsu, Sekai no Enjo. Naruto slammed his hands to the ground, and an intricate seal pattern spread across the arena floor, glowing with power. Rashi, sensing something, activated his Yoton no Yoroi, coating his body in protective lava armor. But when nothing immediately happened, he began to laugh. Ha ha ha. What kind of fool wastes so much chakra on a jutsu that does absolutely nothing? Naruto smirked, unsealing two swords, Inraiha in his right hand and Raijin no Ken in his left. Let's test your theory, Rashi-san. In a flash, Naruto vanished, reappearing above Rashi in a flawless Shunshin no Jutsu. His swords came crashing down, and Rashi barely managed to block them with his lava-covered forearms. But Naruto's right leg, black with Busoshoku no Haki, connected with the side of Rashi's head, sending him flying across the arena. Rashi groaned, steadying himself as he prepared to counter, only for Naruto's Haki-enhanced leg to strike him again, smashing him into the wall. Rashi shook his head, trying to clear the daze from the repeated blows. He stared across the arena at Naruto, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He wasn't this fast before, and my movements, they feel heavier, slower. Naruto's grin widened as he saw Rashi struggle to process the change. Do you still think my jutsu was useless? He called out, his voice brimming with confidence. Rashi's eyes narrowed, realizing there was something more at play. Naruto raised his swords in front of him, the light from Raijin no Ken sparking in his hand. Sekai no Enjo, he began to explain, is an ancient Uzumaki technique. It uses an enormous amount of chakra to activate, but once it's in place, the real beauty is that it doesn't drain me anymore. His eyes gleamed as he saw the growing understanding, and worry, in Rashi's face. Instead, it draws on your chakra. The air around Rashi seemed thicker now, every movement he tried to make feeling more sluggish. Naruto continued, his voice steady, it reduces air resistance for me, making me faster, and increases it for you, slowing you down. The more chakra you use, the worse it gets. Rashi growled under his breath. He had underestimated the boy, and now he was paying for it. I see. I won't make that mistake again. He chuckled darkly, his body beginning to glow with a fiery red aura. The ground trembled slightly as he began tapping into the power of his tailed beast. The chakra of the four tails surged through him, forming a dense, burning cloak around his body. A single tail of molten chakra unfurled behind him, and the temperature in the arena spiked dramatically. Let's end this with our true power, he roared, his voice growing more guttural as he fully tapped into his Biju. Naruto's expression darkened as he tightened his grip on his swords. The sight of Rashi enveloped in the chakra of the four tails made something stir deep inside him. Weapons. Naruto repeated slowly, his voice a low growl. His blue eyes narrowed with fury. Biju aren't weapons. They're beings with souls, just like us. Rashi's tailed beast chakra flared, licking at the edges of the arena as if ready to incinerate everything in its path. You think you can lecture me, boy? Rashi sneered. I've lived with Son Goku's power for decades. You're just a kid playing at being a Jinchuriki. Naruto's chakra flared in response, his anger fueling his resolve. People like you, he spat, who treat Biju like tools, you piss me off. With that, Naruto launched himself forward, disappearing in another burst of speed, moving even faster than before, his enhanced speed catching Rashi off guard. In a split second, Naruto was in front of him, both swords slashing down with precision. Rashi managed to block again, but the force of the blow sent him skidding back, his lava-coated arms straining against the impact. Naruto didn't let up, immediately following with a roundhouse kick infused with Busoshoku no Haki. The black-coated leg connected with Rashi's side, sending him crashing through the arena wall with a deafening boom. Rashi coughed, blood spattering the ground as he struggled to stand. His vision blurred for a moment, but he forced himself to focus. This kid, he's stronger than I thought. Naruto landed softly, barely out of breath, his eyes blazing with determination. Kurama, he called out internally, addressing the nine-tailed fox sealed within him. Let's show him what real teamwork looks like. Kurama, the Kyuubi, growled with approval from inside the seal. About time, Naruto. Let's tear him apart. Without hesitation, Naruto allowed some of Kurama's chakra to flood into his body, mixing with his own. Red chakra swirled around him, forming a flickering cloak that crackled with raw energy. His whisker marks darkened, his eyes gleamed red, and his power multiplied. Rashi's eyes widened. He could feel it, the overwhelming presence of the nine tails. So, you're finally bringing out the Kyuubi, huh? Rashi grinned, blood dripping from his mouth. Good. This is what I've been waiting for. But Naruto's transformation wasn't just about power. It was control. With Kurama's chakra woven into his own, Naruto's movements became sharper, faster, and more refined. He didn't lose himself to rage like Rashi, whose Biju chakra cloak roared with chaotic energy. No, Naruto was in complete control. Let's go. Naruto shot forward again, this time moving like a crimson blur. Rashi barely managed to react, swinging a molten fist cloaked in the Four Tails chakra, but Naruto ducked under the blow, sliding effortlessly around Rashi's defenses. In the blink of an eye, Naruto had closed the gap, his swords flashing with lethal intent. With one precise stroke, he slashed across Rashi's chest, breaking through the Biju chakra cloak. Sparks flew as Raijin no Ken collided with the burning red aura, but Naruto's blade sliced clean through. Rashi howled in pain, staggering backward. He hadn't expected this level of precision from a boy so young. His chakra cloak flickered, momentarily destabilized. Naruto didn't stop. His eyes locked onto Rashi with unrelenting focus. You treat the Biju like weapons, Naruto said, his voice calm but deadly. But I fight with them. That's the difference between you and me. Rashi's face contorted with rage. You brat. He roared, his Biju chakra surging again as he tried to fully unleash the Four-Tails power. Lava began to bubble up from the ground, the arena floor cracking and melting under the heat. But before Rashi could mount another attack, Naruto's form blurred once more. In an instant, he was behind the older shinobi, faster than even Rashi's enhanced senses could track. Naruto raised his hands, forming a Rasengan in each, one blazing with Kurama's chakra and the other crackling with Raijin no Ken's lightning. Take this! Naruto shouted as he slammed both Rasengan into Rashi's back. The impact was devastating, chakra and lightning exploded outward, sending shockwaves through the arena. Rashi was thrown forward, his lava armor shattering as he tumbled across the ground. When the dust settled, Rashi lay motionless, his body scorched and battered. His Biju chakra cloak had completely dissipated, and his Yoton no Yoroi was gone. The mighty Jinchuriki of the Four-Tails had been bested. Naruto stood over him, breathing heavily but victorious. His red chakra cloak slowly faded, and he sheathed his swords. It's over, he said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. From within Naruto's mind, Kurama rumbled in approval. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. Back at the rooftop, Minato and the other Kages had launched into their battles. The fight for Konoha was raging on two fronts, but for Naruto, this victory was just one part of a much larger war. And deep down, he knew that the real battle, against the darkness threatening the village, was still far from over. At the north gate, chaos reigned as the battle for Konoha raged on. Ibiki Marino, the head of the village's interrogation unit, surveyed the battlefield with a critical eye. His mind raced as he analyzed the ongoing skirmishes. Most of the Otonin are weak, he noted, observing how Zabuza Momochi's massive sword, Kubikuribocho, cleaved through enemy ranks with ease. But his brow furrowed. The Suna and Iwa Jonin are just as skilled as our own. As Ibiki's mind wandered, he failed to notice an Iwa shinobi sneaking up behind him. The enemy was fast, and by the time one of Ibiki's comrades shouted a warning, it was too late, death seemed imminent. But before the strike could land, the world blurred around him, and in a flash, a young blonde boy appeared in Ibiki's place, a katana plunged into his chest. Ibiki's heart skipped a beat. Shit. He thought the boy was done for, but before panic could set in, the boy vanished in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone. Another clone leaped through the dissipating cloud, moving swiftly to slice through the enemy with a kunai enveloped in futon chakra, the wind-enhanced blade cutting cleanly through his opponent. Zabuza, witnessing this strange, coordinated assault of blonde figures, narrowed his eyes in surprise. What the hell is going on? He muttered, watching the battlefield as dozens, no, hundreds, of Naruto clones overwhelmed the enemy with near-perfect synchronicity. The clones moved like an unstoppable wave, quickly subduing or killing the remaining invaders. High above, another clone perched on a lantern, calling out to the Konoha forces below. What are you standing around for? The blonde shouted. These are just Kage Bunshin. Use their numbers to your advantage and protect Konoha. The Konoha shinobi and their allies roared in unison, their morale reinvigorated by the sudden shift in the tide. They charged back into the fray, determined to push the invaders back. Ibiki, impressed and grateful, turned to the clone who had just spoken. Good speech, but we still have a problem. Those snake summons are wreaking havoc. If we don't stop them, the village is done for. The clone smirked. Consider it handled. We may be clones, but we're not just any clones, added another nearby Naruto clone, summoning twin Taijutsu, sun shields that glowed with an intense energy. We're much stronger. Without another word, the clones leaped into the air, barreling toward the massive snake summons that were rampaging through the streets, ready to confront the monstrous creatures head-on. At the hospital, the situation was dire. The Osher, Bull, ANBU captain scanned the battlefield, his thoughts heavy. We need reinforcements. Fast. Enemy shinobi were pressing hard against the hospital's defenses, and his forces were struggling to keep them at bay. The wounded inside needed protection, but without more help, the hospital's fate seemed grim. Suddenly, a shadow cast itself over the battlefield. Some of the more experienced enemy shinobi jumped back, sensing danger. But half of the invaders hesitated, only to hear a resounding cry from above, Uzumaki style, Rasengan rain. From the sky, a barrage of Naruto clones rained down, each one wielding a Rasengan. The impact was immediate. The clones smashed into the enemy forces, crushing them into the ground, leaving craters and devastation in their wake. As the dust cleared, one of the clones, Chi Bunshin No. 7, landed in front of the ANBU captain, casually resting the massive sword Fujin on his shoulder. "Hope we're not too late," he asked, grinning. The ANBU captain, stunned by the sight, quickly recovered. "Not at all. Are you the original, Uzumaki-sama?" "Nope," the clone replied, shaking his head. "But I'm more than just a simple clone, so don't worry." He turned to Sakura, who had arrived with him. "Sakura, you need to get inside and help with the wounded. Now." Sakura hesitated. "But, no buts." No. 7 snapped, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Go." Reluctantly, Sakura nodded and rushed into the hospital to assist the medics. The ANBU captain glanced at the remaining enemies, his expression grim. "We need to stall them long enough for my team to regroup. Can you hold them off?" No. 7 examined the opposition for a brief moment before drawing Fujin in a quick, horizontal slash. A gust of wind exploded from the blade, slicing through 6 enemy shinobi, and unfortunately, 2 nearby shops. The ANBU captain blinked, dumbfounded. No. 7 sighed, looking at the sword in his hand. "Sorry. I've only had this sword for a day. I'm still figuring it out." His eyes shifted back to the captain. "Listen, it's better if you send half your men to the other side of the hospital while I handle this group. Trust me, if you stay here, you'll be a liability." The ANBU captain, realizing there was little room for argument, nodded. "You heard him," he barked to his team. "We'll secure the other side of the hospital. Move out." "Hi." As the ANBU squad left to carry out their orders, Chi Bunshin No. 7 turned to the remaining enemies, his eyes gleaming with battle-hungry excitement. "All right," he muttered, readying his sword. "Let's play." In the dimly lit corridor behind the Hokage mountain, Fu Yamanaka and Torian of the Root, ANBU stood before 20 of their subordinates, preparing for a covert operation. "Do you understand your orders?" Fu asked, his voice low and commanding. "Hi," the operatives responded in unison. "Good," Torian said, stepping forward. "Follow me and Fu." Before he could finish, a chilling voice interrupted him from behind. "To your death." Torian's eyes widened in shock as he felt a blade slide through his skull. A Kusanagi sword pierced his head cleanly, wielded by none other than Chi Bunshin No. 8. The clone withdrew the sword just as 50 more Naruto clones charged from the shadows, attacking the forces from both sides with a battle cry. The operatives were caught off guard, their numbers rapidly dwindling from 19 to 15 in a matter of moments. Fu, the leader, quickly regained his composure and began taking down clones with brutal efficiency. Kicking one clone into another, he punched another in the chest before throwing a kunai at a fourth. But to his horror, the clone simply vanished in a puff of smoke, only for another to appear behind him, driving the kunai into one of his men's skulls and pinning him to the ceiling. "These clones aren't as durable as we are," Fu thought, frustration bubbling within him as he tore through more of them. But their coordination, it's better than ours. The battle raged for 5 more minutes, costing the net 6 more operatives. As Fu turned to assess the situation, he felt a sudden warning shout from one of his men. Instinctively, he spun around and kicked Chi Bunshin number 8 in the chest, expecting him to disperse in a cloud of smoke. But number 8 didn't disappear. Instead, he twisted in midair, landing in a crouch, unharmed. Fu narrowed his eyes. "You're not a simple Kage Bunshin." Number 8 smirked. "No shit." Fu, undeterred, squared his shoulders. "It doesn't matter. You're still in a losing position. You can't win against me and my 8 remaining subordinates." Number 8's grin widened. 8? Are you sure about that? Thud. Fu's heart raced as the sound of one of his men collapsing echoed through the corridor. He didn't dare take his eyes off number 8. "What is going on, soldier?" he asked, feeling an uncomfortable pain spreading through his body, his vision beginning to blur. "You're poisoned," number 8 answered calmly. "Just like the rest of your men. During the battle, I used Shadow Step to hide in the shadows of my clones, cutting each of you with barely noticeable nicks. It was enough to ensure that even if the Kage Bunshin failed to defeat you, you wouldn't proceed with your mission." Number 8's grin turned vicious. "But since I've got specific orders, prepare to get slaughtered." With another scream, a fresh wave of Naruto clones burst forward, descending upon the remaining forces. The ensuing fight was quick and brutal. Fu managed to take down 2 more clones, but the rest of his squad fell swiftly, poisoned and weakened. Number 8 stood over the last of the fallen, wiping blood from his kunai. "5 of you, stay here and clean up this mess. We can't let any civilian stumble upon it. The rest of you, come with me to secure the other safe houses." "Hai," the clones responded, their voices unified as they prepared for the next phase of the battle to protect Konoha. The tension in the arena was palpable as Shikamaru's team reached the infirmary, knowing full well the chaos erupting throughout Konoha. Shikamaru, ever cautious, halted the group just before they entered. "Hold on," he said, eyes narrowing as he scanned their surroundings. "We're under attack from Suna, and we don't know what that Gaara guy will do. Be ready for anything." His teammates, Karui, Choji, and Karen, all nodded in agreement. Each of them knew that Gaara wasn't someone to be taken lightly. Even if they hadn't seen him in action, his reputation as the unstable Jinchuriki of the One Tail preceded him. With everyone on alert, they entered the infirmary. Inside, they were met with a grim scene. 2 ANBU lay lifeless on the floor, their bodies bloodied and crushed, while several injured genin rested on the beds. At the far end of the room stood Gaara, seated on one of the beds, his siblings, Temari and Kankuro, poised defensively in front of him, their expressions tense and determined. "We won't let you touch our brother," Temari shouted, her fan held out defensively, ready for battle. Shikamaru raised his hands calmly, showing he wasn't looking for a fight. "We'd like to avoid any conflict if possible." Karui scoffed, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Are you serious? Suna attacked our village." Before Shikamaru could respond, Gaara spoke, his voice surprisingly calm. "I will not attack Naruto Uzumaki's village." He turned his gaze toward Shikamaru, the gratitude in his eyes evident. "Naruto allowed me to sleep without fear of hurting my siblings. He has done more for me in a short time than my father ever did in all my years." Gaara's words were laced with sincerity and respect, a stark contrast to the monster many believed him to be. Shikamaru scratched his head, feeling the weight of Gaara's words. Yeah, as troublesome as Naruto is, he has a way of doing things like that. Karui, still unconvinced, folded her arms. "You're really going to believe them?" While the conversation continued, Karen's sharp senses focused elsewhere. "Where's Sasuke-kun?" she asked, scanning the room, her voice tense. Gaara looked at her, his tone as neutral as ever. The Oto Anbu took him. They tried to kill the rest of the genin, but I stopped them. He gestured to two Oto shinobi lying dead on the floor, their bodies clearly dealt with by Gaara's sand. Choji stepped forward. Do you know which way they went? Before Gaara could respond, Kankuro interjected. He can't even stand up after his last fight. Shikamaru's brow furrowed. Karen? He asked, suddenly realizing something was off. He turned around and saw that his teammate was missing. Where did she go? She left the moment Gaara said the Uchiha was taken, Temari answered flatly. Shikamaru groaned, rubbing his temple. TCH, troublesome. Meanwhile, near the Hokage tower, Naruto's clones were holding the line. The battle had been relatively easy so far, with the clones cutting down the enemy with efficiency. Man, these guys are just cannon fodder, one of the Kage Bunshins grumbled, swinging a kunai. Why would they even send them here? Shut up before you jinx it, snapped number 9, another clone who was positioned nearby. You should be glad it's this easy instead of complaining. His words were cut off as the ground beneath them erupted violently. Spikes of earth shot up, cutting through half of their forces in an instant. The remaining clones managed to leap back just in time, avoiding the deadly trap. Number 9 spun around, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the source of the attack, Kitsuchi, the powerful IWA shinobi, standing with a smirk on his face. I told you so. Number 9 shouted in frustration, glaring at the clone who had jinxed them. Kitsuchi eyed the clones, slightly impressed. I'm surprised mere clones were able to avoid my attack, he mused. His hands flew through a series of hand seals, preparing to unleash a far more devastating jutsu. But you won't survive this one. Just as he was about to strike, a flash of green and a powerful kick to the face sent him flying backward, his jutsu unfinished. Dynamiku and Tori, bellowed Guy, landing gracefully after his attack. He flashed his trademark thumbs up to Kakashi, who arrived right behind him, calm as ever. Naruto, Kakashi started, his Sharingan gleaming, but before he could finish, number 9 interrupted. I'm number 9, the clone clarified, Oyabun is still at the arena. I think. Kakashi's brow furrowed slightly. He made 9 of you. Actually, 10, number 9 corrected with a small smirk. Guy, ever the beacon of energy, looked impressed. Such youthful endurance. It's a testament to your training, he exclaimed, confusing Kakashi even more. Either way, Kakashi said, regaining his focus, you and the clones should stay back and continue protecting the area. Leave Kitsuchi to us. Number 9 nodded, clearly relieved. Yeah, I'll be honest, he's an S-rank shinobi, and I'm not going to be much help against someone like that. He turned to the remaining clones and barked out orders. You heard Kakashi-san. Fall back and continue protecting the village. The clones quickly complied, scattering to carry out their duties. Guy cracked his knuckles as he stared down Kitsuchi, who was getting back to his feet, his expression grim. So, what's your plan, my youthful friend? Guy asked, turning to Kakashi with a gleam in his eye. Kakashi's Sharingan flared. Simple, he said with calm confidence. We fight together. Back in the arena, as the chaos of the invasion swirled around them, Shikamaru, Choji, Karui, and the Sand siblings were at a crossroads. Shikamaru knew time was running out, Konoha needed every capable shinobi on the field, and now that Sasuke had been taken by Orochimaru's forces, things had become even more complicated. We don't have time to waste, Shikamaru said, his mind racing as he tried to plan their next move. Karen ran off to find Sasuke. We'll have to go after them, but we need to secure this area first. Gaara, still weakened from his earlier fight, looked up at Shikamaru with a rare hint of vulnerability. Naruto, he helped me understand something, Gaara murmured. For the first time, I don't feel like a monster. I owe him for that. Shikamaru sighed, though there was a trace of a smile on his face. Yeah, that sounds like Naruto. He has a habit of getting people to change. Temari stepped forward, her fan resting on her shoulder. We'll stay here with Gaara and make sure no one else causes trouble. Kankuro nodded, cracking his knuckles. If anyone tries to mess with us, we'll handle it. Good, Shikamaru said. Then we'll head after Sasuke. Just try not to die. As the team prepared to move out, Shikamaru couldn't shake the feeling that the invasion was far from over. His mind already started forming strategies for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the real challenge would come when they finally faced Orochimaru and his forces head-on. One thing was clear, this battle for Konoha was only just beginning. Series ends here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe.